Now, think about the vastness of the universe. Our galaxy contains between 100 and 400 billion stars. Many of them can potentially host planets. Many of those planets might have water in them and be capable of supporting life. And this is just the Milky Way alone. What's the likelihood of other intelligent civilizations existing out there? Well, there's a famous formula called the Drake equation. It's a mathematical tool to guess how many civilizations from outer space might be able to talk to us in our Milky Way galaxy. It was made by a scientist named Frank Drake in 1961. Here are the variables in it. N is the number of civilizations we could potentially talk to in our galaxy. R star is how fast new stars are born in our galaxy. F sub p is the fraction of stars with planets around them. N sub e is the average number of planets around each star that could support life. F sub L is the fraction of those planets where life might actually start. F sub I is the fraction of planets with life that could become smart civilizations. F sub c is the fraction of smart civilizations that send signals into space. And L is how long those civilizations keep sending signals. Of course, we won't get an exact number like this. It's more like an educated guess, and we don't have any answer to that. But based on at least some information we know, there might be around 100 million worlds where life should have evolved. But if that's the case, then why haven't we met or heard from anyone? This is called the Fermi paradox. It's named after the famous physicist Enrico Fermi. He asked a simple but very important question: where is everybody? Our universe should be filled with chatty extraterrestrial beings, advanced civilizations, and spaceships zipping around. Yet, when we look up at the night sky or listen with our radio telescopes and antennas, it's eerily quiet. All we get is the so-called Great Silence of the universe. Scientists from Oxford University's Future of Humanity Institute are trying to answer this question. And they're not the only ones. A group called METI, for Messaging Extraterrestrial Intelligence, organized a workshop in Paris in 2019 to explore this mystery. The workshop brought together experts from various fields, like astrophysics, biology, psychology, and so on. One of the ideas discussed is called the zoo hypothesis. It suggests that perhaps other civilizations do exist, but they're simply not broadcasting their presence. Maybe they know that making direct contact with us could be risky for both sides. So they're intentionally avoiding us, because they're watching us like observing a zoo. They could be using advanced technology we can't detect. There are also some optimistic explanations, like time delays. Space, as you know, is unimaginably big. The time it takes for signals or information to travel across the universe is enormous. It's possible that other civilizations exist, but their signals haven't reached us yet, or ours haven't reached them. But some explanations aren't very optimistic. Like, some scientists think Earth might really be unique. Maybe the conditions that led to life and intelligent beings are so incredibly rare that there are no other planets like ours. Scientists point out that there are many planets similar to Earth, and some are much older. This means there should be plenty of planets where life could evolve. Recent research also suggests that life might be way more resilient than we thought. And, well, while it increases the amount of life existing out there, it also increases the chances that intelligent life doesn't last very long. It might destroy itself before it can spread to other parts of the universe. This is a concerning idea for the future of humanity. The researchers also considered that many planets might be at a similar stage in their development. That's why it's hard for them to explore the universe at the same time. But even they agreed that this explanation is way too far-fetched. And finally, one of the big potential explanations is called the Great Filter. This idea was suggested in the 1990s by Robin Hanson. It says that for life to develop and become advanced like us, it has to overcome some really tough challenges. First of all, the planet itself should have a good stable star and good enough conditions on it. Then life has to start on that planet. These life forms need to be able to reproduce using things like DNA. Simple cells must evolve into more complex cells. More complex organisms with multiple cells must develop. And eventually, these organisms must figure out how to reproduce, which increases genetic diversity. And finally, These organisms must be smart enough to use tools, create, and explore things. Finally, they should colonize other planets and star systems without destroying themselves. And maybe one of these stages is so incredibly hard that most civilizations don't make it past that point. This challenge could be something like developing intelligence in the first place, or it might be the struggle to avoid self-destruction. So, perhaps life isn't rare at all, but most of it doesn't go beyond simple tiny organisms like bacteria. Even if the universe is full of bacteria, they don't become advanced enough to build spaceships. The Great Filter might also be something from outside, like a huge asteroid crashing into a planet, a dangerous burst of gamma rays, or a massive star going supernova. These events could destroy life on any planet, no matter how advanced they are. So, if we've already passed this challenge, it means we could be the only ones in the universe and we can explore it. But if we suddenly hear from a super advanced civilization, it could mean the hard part of the challenge is still ahead of us. Now, the Fermi paradox focuses on intelligent civilizations. It just implies that there should be civilizations more advanced than us, or at least as intelligent as us. But if you think about it, why should extraterrestrial life be similar to ours at all? It might be completely different for many important reasons. Life elsewhere might have developed under completely unique conditions. This could lead to forms of intelligence and consciousness very unlike our own. For example, it could have evolved into highly advanced forms that aren't based on biology as we know it. These beings could exist as energy-based entities, silicon-based life forms, or even as a hive mind. And because they have evolved completely differently, they may be capable of things that we aren't capable of. For example, we can't see the entire light spectrum. Our eyes also can't perceive cool things like dark matter. But who knows what the vision of extraterrestrial beings may be capable of? Their abilities might even extend beyond our three-dimensional perception. They might be able to perceive and interact with higher dimensions, which is why they could have unique, interesting insights into the nature of our world. Or maybe they've learned to think outside of time, like in the movie Arrival. For us, we still haven't met them, but for extraterrestrial beings themselves, the concept of time doesn't exist at all. They're simultaneously in the past, present, and future. For humans, something like this is hard to even imagine. Plus, even on Earth, we don't fully grasp how consciousness works or why it exists. We're not even sure when exactly we became conscious. So even if we do encounter extraterrestrial life, it will be hard for us to understand them or communicate with them. We think that they might have entirely different language systems, symbols, and so on, but they might not even have any communication systems at all. As you can see, the possibilities are endless. Evolution is a process that can go in many different directions. It's possible that extraterrestrial life developed in ways we can't easily understand or even imagine. These things are intriguing to think about. There are still no easy answers. The Fermi paradox remains one of the most exciting and mystery questions in science. Scientists continue to explore these mysteries through a multidisciplinary approach. They're hoping to find clues that could lead to breakthroughs in our understanding of alien intelligence. And until we find a definitive answer, we can keep sparking our curiosity and imagination.
Listen to this. Neanderthal fiber technology. Nope, I'm not joking. The concept is real. In 2020, a team of scientists published a paper that redefined the way we saw our closest ancestors. A find in France changed archaeology forever, and it wasn't the first time something like this had happened. But let me start from the beginning. Neanderthals. For a long time, they fit the image of the typical cavemen. If you are now thinking of someone like Fred Flintstone, you wouldn't be much wrong. What was the reason behind this stereotype? When did we start believing that Neanderthals were not the brightest tools in the shed of evolution? In comes William King, a 19th century British geologist. He was the man who named the Neanderthals. Based on the bones King found, the scientist declared the species not intelligent, and this image stuck with the Neanderthals for centuries to come. But a piece of string, just a quarter of an inch long, changed everything. A small, dry river valley, Abri du Maras, was the place of the great find. Archaeologists unearthed a cord fragment next to a stone tool. Such twisted fibers could have been used for everything from making clothes to fishing nets. In prehistory, this was some advanced tech, and the Neanderthals seemed to have mastered it. Scientists already knew that these early humans made tar from birch bark, and that they produced shell beads. There's even evidence of Neanderthal art. They were definitely not primitive. The string section and similar finds are changing the way we perceive our ancestors. The world of archaeology is constantly changing. Take the pyramids in Egypt, for example. Turns out, they weren't really built by an army of people who the pharaoh made work until they passed out. Herodotus, the famous Greek historian, was the man who started the confusion. He claimed, in 500 BCE, that 100,000 men took part in the construction of the Great Pyramid in Giza. He made no mention of who they were and why they were building the pyramids. That's how the myth started. Huge stone slabs pulled by humans, driven by a foreman with a whip. But Egyptologists would beg to differ. Those are the scientists who study ancient Egypt's culture. Fairly recently, they uncovered a workers' village that told a different tale. Yes, there was evidence of hard work on the workers' bones, but the construction industry is demanding even today. It took almost 6 years for 12,000 workers to complete the world's tallest building, Burj Khalifa. Back in Egypt, 3 times more workers finished the Great Pyramid in around 2 decades. An impressive feat of ancient engineering, wouldn't you agree? Superiors looked well after the Egyptians who built the pyramids. Their diet was rich in protein. They had medical care and they got paid properly. In fact, they lived better than the non-working population. And they lived with their families near the construction site. Archaeologists know all this because they unearthed bakeries and dormitories with bread jars and other goodies. Looks like the pharaohs were okay employers after all, and the job market wasn't that terrible. They also kept detailed papyrus records of the build and hieroglyphs. You and I wouldn't stand a chance of reading these letters that resemble images. Egyptologists had the same problem. For over a millennium, no one had used this type of font. And it's not like there was an English ancient Egyptian dictionary you could open and find meanings of words. But all this changed in 1822. A couple of decades before, the French found a broken slab of black granite. The stone contained one text in 3 scripts: Ancient Greek, Egyptian hieroglyphs, and Demotic. The last one was also the Egyptian language, but in a simplified script. Scientists dated it back to 196 BCE. The content is a religious proclamation. A French philologist and Orientalist, Jean-François Champollion, was the first one to crack the code. You see, people haven't forgotten ancient Greek letters. The Frenchman successfully matched the Greek letters with the ones in the Egyptian script. And voila, we were finally able to read hieroglyphs. The name of the piece of granite that made it all possible was the Rosetta Stone. The importance of its discovery went beyond archaeology. The word Rosetta Stone even entered the English dictionary. It represents a discovery that helps people understand an enigma that has been puzzling them for a long time. There are similar games. A symbol is attached to a particular message. Then you have to decode the message by replacing the symbol with a corresponding letter. In a nutshell, this is what scientists did with the Rosetta Stone more than 2 centuries ago. Do you know what is the oldest deciphered language in Europe? It has an unattractive name, Linear B. The script belongs to the Mycenaean Greek language. It predates the ancient Greek alphabet by several centuries. You can easily guess which script it is descended from. Linear A. The people from Crete used Linear B more than 1,000 years ago. During the Late Bronze Age, the Greek civilization that used the script vanished. There was no one who could read Linear B, and more importantly, no one knew it existed in the first place. This was about to change during the first years of the 20th century. a British archaeologist by the name of Sir Arthur Evans excavated a vast palace complex at Knossos, Crete, Greece. This was the center of the Minoan culture that created the enigmatic script. The palace boasted some 1,300 rooms. They had colorful paintings of dolphins, griffins, and bulls. All of these captivated the archaeologists' imagination. But their biggest find was at first overlooked: thousands of slabs of baked clay. The fire that brought down the palace helped preserve the tablets. It was impossible to read the slabs, though. They were written in an unknown language. The scientific community had to wait for another half a century before Michael Ventris cracked the code. He was an English architect and cryptographer. Ventris studied Greek and Latin. While attending the famous archaeologist's lecture, the young man decided to solve the puzzle of Linear B once and for all. He managed to do so in 1952. One of Ventris's most amazing discoveries was that the script was an archaic form of Greek. But cryptology still hasn't solved the code of Linear A. This writing system will remain a mystery until a motivated young person like Michael Ventris comes along. They wouldn't have to be a professional archaeologist. Basil Brown certainly wasn't. Yet in 1939 he discovered the richest early medieval tomb in Europe. This happened in Sutton Hoo in the southeast of England. This wasn't an ordinary tomb made out of stone. It was a full-size ship, 3 times as long as a London double-decker bus. And that's not all. Apart from its main purpose, the ship was full of riches. Deluxe hanging bowls, feasting vessels, gold and dress accessories, and luxurious textiles were just some of the treasures found. Archaeologists were also amazed by the silverware from distant Byzantium. You probably know this city as Istanbul, Turkey. Even in our age, it's several days' drive from Sutton Hoo. Just imagine how much time and money it cost to import a silver plate in the 7th century. That's when the ship went down, according to archaeologists. The English couldn't have done it. At that time, there was no England. The people living in the British Isles at the time were the Anglo-Saxons. Perhaps the ship from the grassy mounds in Suffolk belonged to one of their kings? We will never know. The local acidic soil did away with any possible evidence, or no one laid there in the first place. It could have been a cenotaph, which is a monument constructed to honor an important person. The archaeologists still don't have a definite answer. But what they have found at Sutton Hoo shed light on the Dark Ages. Before the discovery of the ship, they knew little about what had been going on in Britain after the Romans left. Now, the image of the early Anglo-Saxon society was much clearer. Perhaps the English soil will be the site of the next great breakthrough in archaeology.
Most people know that pyramids were built as grand tombs for the pharaohs, designed to ensure they had a smooth journey to the afterlife. The Great Pyramid of Giza, for instance, was constructed for the pharaoh Khufu. But what most people don't know is that this whole pyramid building trend started right here with the step pyramid of Djoser about 4,700 years ago. This massive structure was built for Pharaoh Djoser, a ruler from Egypt's 3rd dynasty. It rises 7 layers high above the ground and stands about 200 feet tall. We think of it today as a phenomenal architectural project, but for ancient Egyptians, the step pyramid of Djoser turned out to be more like a massive experiment, a trial run, if you will, to perfect their building skills before they moved on to even more ambitious pyramids. Reaching new heights is super exciting, but the real mystery is what is going on below the ground. In this pyramid's underground labyrinth, there is a network of tunnels stretching about 3.5 miles long, and some researchers believe these tunnels might have been part of a sophisticated water system that could completely change what we think about pyramid construction. Let's talk about this massive complex located in Saqqara. Surrounding the pyramid, there's what's known as a dry moat, a continuous trench that is up to 164 feet wide and almost 2 miles long. It forms a sort of rectangular shape around the pyramid. This trench has an average depth of about 65 feet. Now, if you were to add up all the earth and rock they dug out to create this moat, it would be about 10 times the volume of the step pyramid itself. For the longest time, People just assumed this trench was nothing more than a huge quarry, a place where they dug up stone and clay to build the step pyramid. Makes sense, right? But when you take a closer look, it doesn't add up. The trench is too narrow and deep to be practical for mining, and its layout doesn't match anything we know about ancient Egyptian quarrying methods. Plus, some sections of the trench are actually covered with a rocky ceiling, which would have made it nearly impossible to use as a quarry. Another theory suggests that the dry moat had some kind of spiritual significance. Maybe it was a sacred place, where souls of nobles gathered to serve the late king in the afterlife. There are even niches in the walls that work as a hint at this spiritual function. But most researchers believe that this purpose likely developed much later, long after the complex was built for Djoser. So, what was the moat really designed for? In 2020, a researcher came up with a pretty intriguing idea. It is possible that this trench was actually designed to collect and manage water, especially after heavy rainfalls. Now, that makes sense when you consider the location. The moat sits in an area that could easily have been flooded by runoff water from nearby plains. This could also explain why the trench wasn't used for new graves until much later when the climate became drier and less prone to flooding. The story becomes even more intriguing, as this trench appears to be part of a larger, more complex hydraulic system within the Djoser complex. It is like the trench has several compartments, carefully carved out of the rock and connected by tunnels. These compartments likely served as a part of a water treatment system, where water would flow from one compartment to the next, getting cleaner as it moved along. Now, here is where things start to tie into the pyramid itself. The Djoser complex has a series of underground shafts, and some researchers think that water from the moat's deep trench might have been used to power a hydraulic lift system, and this giant water-powered elevator could have been used to raise the heavy stones needed to build the pyramid. It worked like a volcano, but instead of lava, water did the heavy lifting. Imagine a big deep hole in the ground at the center of the pyramid site. Inside this hole, there was a huge wooden platform, kind of like a giant raft that could move up and down. When the workers wanted to lift a heavy stone, they would fill the hole with water. As the water rose, the wooden platform started to float up, carrying the stone with it, almost like a giant water-powered elevator. When the stone reached the right height, the workers slid it off the platform and onto the pyramid. The idea is that water from the deep trench, after being cleaned and filtered, would flow into these shafts. A massive float, possibly made of wood, would then rise as the water filled the shaft, lifting the stones up to where they were needed for construction. Once the stone was in place, they'd let the water out, lowering the platform back down to the bottom, ready to lift the next stone. This fancy hydraulic lift system could have been a game changer, making the whole building process a lot faster and more efficient without using a lot of workforce. It is like the ancient Egyptians were already embracing the whole idea of work smarter, not harder. But of course, not everyone is on board with this theory. Some experts argue that the area where the step pyramid of Djoser was built couldn't have held enough water from occasional rains to maintain such a fancy hydraulic system. The main theory suggests that, in the past, there might have been some kind of lake nearby that would have filled up after a period of rain, and this lake could have supplied water to the complex's hydraulic system. But there is no mention of such a lake in any ancient Egyptian writings, so it might be more of a what-if situation than a reality. And then there's the issue of the hard work itself. Remember when I said this method could have allowed the ancient builders to raise stones with far less effort? Well, that might not be entirely true. According to some experts, just building this hydraulic device would have required a lot more heavy work than simply moving the stone blocks using good old-fashioned manpower. And let's not forget, the step pyramid of Djoser is like a baby pyramid compared to those that came later. The stones used for Djoser's pyramid weighed, on average, about 660 pounds each, which is nothing compared to the more than 2.5-ton blocks used later for the pyramid of Chephren. If this cool water lift theory gets completely ruled out, we still need to explain how this pyramid was built in the first place. To answer that, we need to rewind a bit and talk about the original plans. See, before Djoser's tomb became a pyramid, the idea was to construct a simple mastaba. This type of tomb was pretty common in earlier periods, a flat-roofed rectangular structure with sloping sides. But after the original mastaba was finished, they decided to expand it a bit by adding more layers on top. And then they added even more layers, until the construction reached 6 distinctive steps, each one smaller than the previous. And they probably did all this by raising those heavy stones using ramps, not a water-powered elevator. There is still so much we don't know about the step pyramid of Djoser. More research is definitely needed to fully understand how this system worked, or if it even existed at all. But the idea of using water to help build the pyramid adds a whole new layer to our understanding of ancient Egyptian engineering. It's a powerful reminder of just how clever and resourceful those builders were, using the natural landscape and the power of water to create one of the most iconic monuments in history. Wow! Scientists have found a lost city beneath Egypt's pyramids, and it's incredibly large, bigger than the biggest target you can imagine. Underground chambers, passageways, and vertical structures. Scientists have no idea what purposes they serve. But let's start from the very beginning. Italian and Scottish scientists studying the Pyramid of Khafra discovered something that looked like secret tunnels under 3 pyramids. This find might change what we know about ancient Egypt. The expedition, called the Khafra Project, was led by Corrado Malunga from Pisa, Italy, and Filippo Biondi from the University of Strathclyde, Scotland. Their mission was to focus on exploring Khafra's pyramid, the second largest on the Giza Plateau. Scientists uncovered a massive structure beneath the Pyramid of Khafra. Could it be an ancient Egyptian underground city? The experts analyzed the data they had and came to the conclusion that 8 large vertical structures could be hiding beneath, possibly wells or shafts. They extend a staggering 6,500 feet across. Imagine placing 2.5 Burj Khalifas on the ground, one after another, and you get the sheer size of this find. These shafts also plunge nearly 2,000 feet underground. Some of the deepest underground stations in the world are located at a mere 380 feet underground or so. These cylindrical shafts are surrounded by spiral paths. Picture some old Gothic castle. They're connected to 2 giant, weirdly shaped chambers. Are those cubes? Or possibly bowls? Each of these chambers is likely more than 260 feet across. Now, even though we know about the structures now, no one has figured out their original purpose yet. Want to hear something even more shocking? Okay then. The team is almost sure that similar access points can be found under all 3 pyramids. In other words, all of them might be linked by a hidden system of underground tunnels, chambers, and passages. Even deeper, about 4,000 feet under the surface, there might be more unknown structures. And doesn't it add to the mystery? But the coolest news is that, according to some team members, these hidden structures near Giza pyramids could align with the legendary Halls of Amenti. In ancient Egyptian mythology, it's a place where people are believed to arrive when they're close to the end of their days. There, they are said to take a 3-day-long trial, facing their biggest fears. Now, how did scientists even discover these hidden spaces? To uncover them, researchers used 2 satellites positioned 420 miles above Earth. They sent radar signals to the Giza Plateau, and these signals generated detailed images, which were later compiled into a 3D model of the underground layout, including the newly detected shafts. Then, using synthetic aperture radar or SAR technology, which is a type of radar that can penetrate through stone, the team also spotted 5 small room-like structures hidden deep within the pyramid. One of these chambers contained a sarcophagus, which was once thought to be the tomb of Pharaoh Khafra. But now, scientists believe this was a mistake. The true burial site is likely to be elsewhere. In any case, these 5 hidden rooms were completely unknown before the scans. They seem to be arranged in the center of the pyramid and are linked to underground pathways leading somewhere below the structure. There's an opinion that these tunnels could lead to more hidden chambers and wells. Some of them might be around 4,500 years old. Wow! What if they help us solve ancient civilization mysteries? Preliminary data suggests that all this underground space can be much more than a few empty chambers. There might be many more hidden structures near the Giza pyramids. How come? Well, the thing is, the structure appears to include hollowed-out sections with spiral pathways leading even deeper underground. Refining the images hinting at this could reveal an extensive subterranean network. It might be a whole city hidden under the surface. Now, despite the excitement surrounding these findings, there are also a lot of people who don't believe in the existence of the underground city. They're skeptical about the archaeological discovery in Egypt due to the lack of peer-reviewed verification. That's why several archaeologists and radar experts have challenged the validity of the claims. They've explained that the technology used to make the discovery may not be advanced enough to produce such detailed underground imagery. According to them, the 5 smaller chambers found near the surface could be natural formations, since the area had had sacred significance long before the construction of the pyramids. Some experts have even dismissed the use of radar methods in this context altogether. They call these methods scientifically unproven and question their accuracy. The discovery has also reignited discussions about ancient Egyptian myths and the possibility of hidden texts lying somewhere beneath the Giza pyramids. The layout of the newly detected underground chambers shares similarities with mythological accounts of the Hall of Records, a rumored chamber that could preserve early Egyptian wisdom. If confirmed, these findings could significantly reshape the understanding of Egypt's sacred topography. Plus, this lost city beneath Egypt's pyramid could become physical evidence of previously unknown underground structures. That's why the Khafra project is super eager to begin excavating to confirm their findings. But getting approval from Egyptian authorities is a challenging process. The discoveries still need to undergo peer review before they are accepted by the academic community. By the way, this recent archaeological discovery in Egypt comes on the heels of another discovery involving a weird structure beneath the Royal Giza Cemetery, which researchers believe is unnatural in origin. Archaeologists used remote sensing techniques and uncovered a mysterious L-shaped structure underground in the Western Cemetery of Giza. This area is known to house burials of royal family members and high-ranking officials. Many of the tombs in the cemetery have above-ground mastabas, rectangular stone or mud brick structures with flat roofs. But there is an area in the center of the cemetery where there are no above-ground structures. To investigate this unexplored region, the team used electrical resistive tomography and ground-penetrating radar. ERT works by sending electrical currents into the ground and measuring the resistance to detect remains. As for GPR, it sends radar into the ground and maps the structures based on the radar's return. The team found an anomaly about 6.5 feet beneath the surface. It appeared to be an L-shaped structure measuring at least 33 feet in length. The readings suggested that the structure had been backfilled with sand after its construction. This made the team hypothesize that it could be a mix of sand and gravel, or possibly an air void. This anomaly was classified as a highly resistive structure, which meant it didn't occur naturally. Motoyuki Sato, the study's lead author and professor at Tohoku University in Japan, claims that the structure is not a natural formation due to its sharp shape. Another weird thing about ancient Egyptian pyramids is that historians have long believed that they were built primarily for royals and high-status individuals who had the wealth and power to create such massive structures. However, new research from the archaeological site of Tombos in modern-day Sudan challenges this assumption. The thing is, Tombos' pyramid may have served as burial sites for low-status workers as well as elites. The hard-working members of ancient communities may have found their last resting place in some of the most visible monuments, including the pyramids. Located along the Nile River in the ancient region of Nubia, Tombos became part of Egypt after its conquest of the area around 1400 BCE. That's when Egypt established the site to strengthen its colonial control. Workers at human skeletons from Tombos, originally studied in 2012. In particular, they examined the entheses, the areas where tendons and ligaments attach to bones. Such an analysis can give us insights into the amount of physical labor a person performed. When someone does hard labor, their bones often develop distinct crests and ridges at these attachment points due to the stress on the tendons and ligaments. And while some skeletons showed little change in their entheses, suggesting they belonged to individuals from the upper classes, others showed more serious changes. It means they belong to lower-class workers. This finding can totally challenge our earlier understanding of pyramid burials, especially the idea that only elites were buried in the pyramids, because the pyramids themselves were designed for the elite. This recent research may prove that lower-class workers may have found their final resting place in these monumental structures too.
This is not a dune set. This is a very real desert in Niger. Jado was probably built by the nomadic Sao people and is filled with ksars, which are fortified houses made of salt and clay, with giant walls and secret passages. Located deep in the desert, it was once a vital stop for trans-Saharan caravans, but is now a hotspot for smugglers and bandits. The site has been off-limits since 2002 due to its dangers. The origin of the ksars remain a mystery. No archaeological studies have been conducted, leaving many questions unanswered. Even today, shifting sands reveal and conceal parts of these ancient ruins, fueling local speculation about what might still be hidden beneath the desert. Speaking of connective tunnels, scientists were blown away by the discovery of lava tubes in Saudi Arabia. These underground passages form when molten lava cools down. Researchers believe that ancient nomadic groups may have utilized these tunnels to survive the super harsh desert climates. While excavating the tunnels, archaeologists uncovered artifacts, rock art, and skeletal remains. The art and animal bones show that the people who used the tunnels were probably sheep and goat herders. They're still piecing together whether these groups lived in the tunnels for extended periods or just used them as temporary shelters. The Great Pyramid of Giza has been standing for thousands of years, but it's still hiding secrets. Using special scanning technology, scientists found two hidden structures under an ancient burial ground. The first is a shallow L-shaped structure, and below it is a much larger space that could be a final resting place or a chamber. The smaller structure was filled with sand on purpose, while the deeper one might be an empty chamber. Experts believe the two are connected, possibly as an entrance leading to a secret chamber. This is big news because it might give us some more insight into who built the pyramids and why. The world is full of ancient writing, but some messages refuse to give up their secrets, like the mystery of the Bash Plemi tablet. This unusual stone, pulled from a lake in Georgia, is covered in symbols no one can read. Even with modern technology, experts are completely stumped. The tablet is about the size of a book, with 60 symbols carefully carved into its surface, but 39 of them don't match any known language. Some resemble scripts from ancient civilizations in the Middle East, India, and Egypt, but none are an exact match. To make things even trickier, part of the tablet is broken off, meaning a piece of the puzzle is missing forever. To rule out a hoax, scientists studied the tablet closely. They confirmed it's made of vesicular basalt, an extremely tough local rock. Whoever carved these symbols must have been really skilled. Based on similar archaeological finds, experts believe the tablet could date back thousands of years, possibly to the late Bronze or early Iron Age. Some symbols repeat, which could mean they're numbers. Maybe it's an inventory list, a record of battles, or even an offering to the deities. Until someone cracks the code, the Bash Plemi tablet remains an unsolved mystery from the depths of history. Experts are still stumped with what this Minoan disc might mean. The Phaistos disc is one of the most mysterious finds from the Minoan civilization. This 6-inch clay object, discovered in 1908, has strange spiral markings that no one has fully decoded yet. The disc has 241 symbols on both sides, showing everything from people and animals to tools and plants. Experts have come up with many theories about what the symbols mean. Some think it's an early form of Greek. Others suggest it's a prayer or a hymn. And some even believe it could be a letter from a king in Anatolia to a Greek ruler. Let's see who will be the first to figure this out. It's always a fun day at an archaeologist's office when they find something as big as a 2,000-year-old marble head. A French archaeologist mission went digging inside an old medieval house near Alexandria in Egypt and found a statue's head depicting an old, possibly ill man. This statue dates from the last Egyptian dynasty before it became part of the Roman Empire, and the site where it was found is associated with the likes of Cleopatra and Mark Antony. For archaeologists, even the smallest finds at this site means a lot. You've heard of Lucy, right? The Australopithecus that was an early ancestor for us humans. Well, scientists found some of her species' footprints somewhere in Tanzania. The so-called Laetoli footprints are over 3 million years old. The trail stretched 88 feet and has about 70 footprints, left behind when a bunch of early humans walked across some wet volcanic ash. What's cool is that these early humans were already walking on 2 feet, like us, not all hunched over like apes. The close spacing of the prints shows they probably had short legs and a shorter stride than we do today. In an ancient Egyptian temple, archaeologists uncovered a shrine unlike any other, a place dedicated to falcons and 2 mysterious deities. One deity had a falcon's head, while the other wore a crown with a sun disk and cow horns. But the most baffling discovery was an inscription that read, "It is improper to boil a head in here." At the heart of the shrine, there are 15 headless falcons carefully arranged on a pedestal, likely as offerings to the falcon-headed deity. One theory suggests the birds were boiled first, perhaps to pluck their feathers, before being placed in the shrine, following the strange rule carved into stone. Archaeologists also found a 13-inch iron harpoon nearby. Its true purpose remains unknown, although the shrine also held remains of fish, mammals, and bird eggs, suggesting that the rituals may have included feasting. And speaking of ancient Egypt, meet Hathor. Scientists named her after the ancient Egyptian deity of motherhood, music, and singing. This wooden statue, housed at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, was thought to be just a beautiful artifact, until a surprising secret was uncovered. Using an X-ray machine, experts found a mechanical operating system inside it, with pulleys and axles connecting her shoulder to her left leg. When activated, the system made her hand raise and lower, an engineering marvel from over 3,000 years ago. The statue was created during Egypt's Middle Kingdom, around 1800 BCE, and is often compared to 19th century automata due to its advanced design. It's believed the statue was used in religious ceremonies, symbolizing Hathor's role in dance and music. An unexpected discovery happened in northern Kuwait, where a Kuwaiti Polish team uncovered a mysterious 7,500-year-old statue. The statue features an elongated skull, no mouth, narrow eyes, and a flattened nose. This feature is thought to be an Ophidian figurine, named after the Greek word for snake, and it was likely made by the Ubaid culture, a civilization known for their pottery skills. While no one knows exactly what role this weird statue played, it might have been linked to rituals or symbolic practices. Some scientists think these figurines, found in homes or final resting places, were tied to important cultural beliefs. We couldn't mention unresolved mysteries of this world without speaking about these elongated skulls. In the deserts of Peru, researchers uncovered 5 ancient skeletons, two with unnaturally elongated skulls. While head shaping was common in many cultures, these skulls defy explanation. Local legends tell tales of the so-called gentiles, a mysterious race banished underground by the powerful deities. Some say this is what the skulls represent. Others think this is some type of genetic anomaly, which was confirmed after finding an infant skull, too large to be artificially shaped. 2 centuries ago, a 31-year-old Frenchman stormed into his brother's office in Paris. He had only one thing to share. "I've got it!" The man was so excited that he immediately collapsed. He spent the next 5 days in bed recovering his health. Who was this mysterious person, and why was he so thrilled? Jean-François Champollion made one of the greatest scientific breakthroughs in human history. He had cracked the code of Egyptian hieroglyphs. This enabled scientists to finally unravel the secrets of this ancient civilization. They weren't able to read hieroglyphs for nearly 2,000 years. After the Romans took over Egypt, the intricate writing system slowly faded away from people's minds. The last of the hieroglyphic texts date back to the 4th century. For thousands of years, Egyptians used images to show their lives. But the knowledge of how to read these pictures was lost to modern science. The story of hieroglyphs began in 3250 before current era. That's when ancient Egyptians developed writing. Their motivation was to better organize the distribution and storage of goods. One of the earliest examples is a ceramic jar that had an inscription in black ink. There were 2 major writing systems. The first were the hieroglyphs, which literally means sacred carving. Egyptians carved hieroglyphs in stone on temples, tombs, and similar monuments for 3,000 years. They present a system of pictorial texts. A pictograph is a picture or a drawing that stands for an idea of a word. It's a precursor to the true writing as we have it today. For example, when Egyptians wanted to write ibis, they would draw a small image of the bird. Hieroglyphs can be found on walls. They were a formal way of writing. The other writing system was hieratic. Egyptians mostly used it when writing on papyrus. That's an early, thicker form of the paper we have today. It soon evolved into demotic. This improved version became the most common writing systems in ancient Egypt. Then, in the early 4th century BCE, Alexander the Great took control of Egypt. This was the time when the Greek Ptolemaic dynasty ruled the country. You've probably heard of the last ruler of this dynasty, Cleopatra. During her time, Egyptian Demotic and Greek were used side by side. The two started mixing, and by the year 100, a new language emerged, Coptic. It slowly replaced the ancient writing system. Only Egyptian priests used hieroglyphs for the next couple of centuries, and then their meaning was lost to history. But not forever. Arabs were the first who tried to solve the mystery of the hieroglyphs. Medieval travelers came across these strange symbols and wanted to understand their meaning. They consulted speakers of Coptic and translated text from Greek and Latin into Arabic to break the code of the hieroglyphs. During the Renaissance, Europeans also became fascinated with the legacy of ancient Egypt. Scholars from the Old Continent believed that hieroglyphs were a group of symbols as opposed to a written language. This was all about to change in 1799. A year earlier, Napoleon, the famous French ruler, arrived in Egypt. His subordinates constructed a fort that dated back to the 15th century. Rashid, or Rosetta, was a port town in the northeast of Egypt, near Alexandria. One section of the old fortification wall contained an interesting slab inside. The stone tablet was made of a granite-like rock. It was just 40 inches high and 30 inches wide. It contained 3 distinctive sections of text carved into it. The letters were in 3 scripts and 2 languages: hieroglyphs, Demotic, and Greek. It was a fragment of a larger ancient stela. These are upright stone slabs that are used to dedicate to a person or an event, but the one from Rosetta was damaged. 2/3 of the hieroglyphic text on the top was missing. The bottom Greek text lacked a cornerstone. The only fully preserved section was the writing in Demotic in the middle of the slab. It eventually ended up in the British Museum. The scientific community was intrigued, and the race was on to decipher it. Prints and casts of the slab went out all over Europe. Scholars already knew ancient Greek, so in theory, this shouldn't have been so hard. The first people who saw the Rosetta Stone thought the process would take 2 weeks. In the end, it took 2 decades. The main issue was the fact that hieroglyphs and spoken ancient Egyptian didn't have a connection anymore. Scientists didn't know what sounds the letters on the slab corresponded to. Imagine if English disappeared 1,000 years in the future. Then someone finds a tablet with the word dog. At first, they wouldn't know how to read the word or the individual letters. Even if they figured out how to pronounce the word, they wouldn't know its meaning. This is what linguists were dealing with in the case of the Rosetta Stone. The careful study of the artifact produced another find. The texts weren't direct translations of each other. They both described the same event, but in different words. It was like you saw a movie with 2 friends, and then all 3 of you wrote different reviews about it. The original text was probably in Greek, but the translators added extra words to make it sound more Egyptian. An English physician and physicist, Thomas Young, made the first great breakthrough. He knew that the name Ptolemy appeared several times in the text based on the Greek translation. This wasn't an Egyptian name, so it was impossible to represent it with a single image. The only way to spell out this Greek name was to use symbols that sound like it when produced. This is called transliteration, and we have it today as well. This is how foreign-sounding words are written down in Chinese or some Slavic languages. Young focused on sets of hieroglyphs in oval frames. These are called cartouches. He experimented a bit but finally discovered that one of them read, Ptolemy the Great. The individual hieroglyphs that made up this name corresponded to sounds needed to produce it. This is where our mysterious man from the beginning of the video enters the picture. Champollion picked up where Young left off. He knew Coptic, so the Frenchman was able to determine what many other hieroglyphs sounded like. The eureka moment was close. It came while he was studying a cartouche from a site dedicated to Ramses II. It had 4 symbols. The last 2 were the same. He determined this was the sound S. The first symbol was the sun. This is Ra or Re in Coptic. So the cartouche read Ra something SS. Can you already guess the name? Of course, it's Ramses. This breakthrough finally cracked the code. Ancient Egyptian wasn't a mishmash of cool-looking images. It was a phonetic language that Jean-François Champollion discovered in September of 1822. The stone slab is today known as the Decree of Memphis. The Egyptian Council issued it in this city in the year 196 before current era. In it, they expressed their loyalty to the pharaoh. They erected identical stelae in temples all across Egypt. The Rosetta Stone was just one copy of them, but its content is less important than the fact that Champollion's translation gave these ancient peoples their voice again. During the 1800s, European scholars didn't think that the Egyptian civilization was much older than classical Greek or Roman. Now that scientists could read hieroglyphs, a whole new chapter of human history opened. One of the most famous finds in the history of archaeology happened in 1922. That's when the British archaeologist Howard Carter discovered the tomb of Pharaoh Tutankhamun in Egypt's Valley of the Kings. The whole world admired King Tut's golden mask. But without Champollion's pioneering work, it would be impossible to know who its owner was. The young pharaoh's cartouche is phonetic. For instance, you pronounce the pictograph of a chick as the vowel U. The symbol for the key of life is an ankh, and there is a shepherd's crook in the end. It symbolizes the word ruler.
The Great Pyramid was created as the final resting place of ancient Egyptian monarch Khufu. According to legend, French leader Napoleon entered the Great Pyramid and came back out looking shaken and super pale. He never revealed what he saw inside, but whatever it was is said to have affected him for the rest of his life. When Napoleon entered the pyramid, he would have walked through a super tight and ascending passageway. He'd then go through another passageway, known as the Great Chamber. This corridor would have been much taller than the previous one, and would have cobbles too. He'd then reach the King's Chamber, the centerpiece of the Great Pyramid, which was lined with huge blocks of granite. But it wouldn't have looked as grand as we might imagine. There are no hieroglyphics decorating its walls, as Egyptians only began decorating the burial chambers of pyramids much later on. The pharaoh's tombs deep inside the pyramid would have also been filled with treasures, from chunks of gold to the world's most expensive jewelry. But this would have all been looted a long time ago. The only thing that probably would have been left in there would have been a huge sarcophagus, which would have once contained the king's mummy. He'd also have to walk past the queen's chamber. This room most likely didn't hold any queens though, as pyramids were usually only built for one person. There are mysterious tunnels leading from here. To this day, no one is really sure what they're there for. And that's not the only mysterious and creepy thing Napoleon may have encountered, as stories of pharaohs leaving ancient curses on pyramids go way back. Many pyramids had warnings written on the outside, telling of horrifying things that would happen to those who entered and disturbed the peace. We might not know what exactly Napoleon found in the Great Pyramid that scared him so much, but we know for sure what was found in Tutankhamun's tomb. Tutankhamun was an ancient Egyptian pharaoh who was only 8 or 9 years old when he took to the throne. He became a cultural phenomenon when his tomb was discovered almost completely intact in 1922. His pyramid sits in the Valley of Kings in Thebes, modern Luxor, which is in Egypt. Unlike the Great Pyramid, Tutankhamun's tomb was covered in beautiful wall decorations. The walls told the story of how he would travel to the afterlife through the underworld. Egyptians believed all people would have to take this journey, so they would fill their tombs with objects and paintings to help them get there. There'd also be spells painted on the walls. They believed this would help people pass over to the next realm. The journey would be pretty long, and for that reason, the ancient Egyptians would also fill the pyramids with food. Tutankhamun's pyramid was filled with 8 fruit baskets. They even found something called gingerbread fruit in there. The rooms were jam-packed with furniture, statues, clothes, and staffs, amongst a whole bunch of other things. You'd likely find a lot of clothes and expensive jewelry in the pyramids as well. The ancient Egyptians wanted their ancestors to travel in style to the afterlife. They put Tutankhamun in his final resting place with over 50 pieces of clothing, all of the highest quality. There were tunics, scarves, gloves, and headdresses, and a ton of jewelry. Bracelets, pendants, necklaces, rings, and scarabs for protection were all found inside. Each of them was made of gold or precious stones. There were also fans made of ostrich feathers to keep the old pharaoh cool in the hot Egyptian sun. But the temperature inside the pyramids never actually went above 68 degrees Fahrenheit. The ancient Egyptians developed a super cool air conditioning system that we don't fully understand even today. Tutankhamun's pyramid also contained 130 walking sticks made from ebony, ivory, silver, and gold to help him on his journey. There were 3 chariots hidden away in case he got tired of all the walking. They also put 11 boat paddles inside, but there was no sign of any boat. The pyramids would be littered with the pharaoh's favorite scents and perfumes. During the excavation of Tutankhamun's pyramid, it quickly became clear that it had been robbed during ancient times. There was damage to doors and traces of oils left in empty jars. It looks like someone raided the pyramid for gold and the scents, perfumes, and oils that had been left for King Tut. There was still a bit of perfume, which was made from coconut oil and frankincense, left in one bottle. It seems like Pharaoh Tutankhamun loved board games. There was an ivory traveling set of Senet in his pyramid. Although we don't know for sure exactly how to play it, we have figured out it was sort of an ancient Egyptian version of backgammon. It looks like it was a two-player game where the goal was to knock your opponent off the board. Not really sure who Tutankhamun's mummy was supposed to play with, though. The ancient Egyptians had some rituals that may seem pretty strange to us. For example, they used to shave their eyebrows off if they ever lost a cat. So it's not too surprising they put some really weird things inside pyramids. Archaeologists discovered a collection of mummified cats and scarab beetles in pyramids that date back more than 4,000 years. They were found in the pyramids of Saqqara, which is south of Cairo. They also found a bunch of makeup kits and mirrors inside. Makeup was worn proudly by both men and women in ancient Egyptian times. Eyeliner was the most popular cosmetic. The Rosetta Stone was one of the best discoveries ever made in pyramids. It was found by our man Napoleon Bonaparte and his team. It's a black granite rock that dates back to 196 BCE. It's transcribed in Greek, Demotic, and hieroglyphic. When it was translated in 1822, we got the key to understanding ancient Egyptian hieroglyphics for the very first time. The discovery of Queen Hatshepsut's mummy in 1903 changed our understanding of the Egyptians forever. After she had passed away, her successor, Thutmose III, removed most of the evidence of her reign, so we basically knew nothing about Egypt's first great female leader. She's now gone on to become one of the few and most famous female pharaohs of Egypt. Pharaoh Khufu even had a fully fledged boat in his pyramid. Archaeologists uncovered more than 1,200 pieces of a giant boat near the Great Pyramid at Giza. They reassembled the boat, and it's a whopping 144 feet long. It's most likely a solar boat, which was designed to carry the resurrected king with the deity Ra. Fun fact, the Pyramid of Giza is the last remaining of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. The other 6 are the Hanging Gardens, the Colossus, the Temple of Artemis, the Mausoleum, the Lighthouse, and the Statue of Zeus. This pyramid was also the world's tallest man-made structure for 3,800 years, and it's the biggest pyramid in Egypt. It took a staggering 2.3 million blocks of limestone, and some weighed as much as 80 tons. It took an incredible 100,000 laborers and a whopping 23 years to build. Its original height was a mega 480 feet. In 2017, archaeologists discovered something weird about Egypt's Great Pyramid. There's a hidden void that's at least 100 feet long, and no one really knows why it's there or what's actually inside it. The weird void is the first inner structure discovered within the 4,500-year-old pyramid since the 1800s. Scientists used cosmic rays to detect the massive hole, but are still no closer today to finding out what's inside. The ancient Egyptians took a lot of care building the pyramids, and everything was strategically placed and structurally sound, so it's super unlikely that this hole is due to blocks falling over time. Loads of pyramids also contain small model figurines called ushabti. These represented attendants. They believed they would come to life to serve the pharaohs in the afterlife. But it's amazing that all this stuff actually fit inside. There isn't actually a huge amount of space inside the structures. It's mostly just rock.
Egyptian archaeologists made an extraordinary discovery near Cairo just recently. Drumroll, please. The most ancient and most complete mummy yet discovered in the country. Yes, they were keeping it under wraps. The 4,300-year-old mummy was found in a group of tombs close to the Step Pyramid of Djoser, dating back to the Egyptian Old Kingdom. It was covered in layers of gold. The team also found several other tombs, including one belonging to an ancient Egyptian official and another belonging to a secret keeper who had the power to perform special ceremonies. Another interesting tomb was that of a writer, which featured the largest statues ever found in the area. This vast burial site is also home to more than a dozen pyramids and resting grounds. Probably one of the most famous mummies in the world is that of Hatshepsut. She ruled Egypt like a boss for around 20 years, building all sorts of impressive buildings and creating new trade routes. But when archaeologist Howard Carter found her tomb in the Valley of the Kings, her sarcophagus was empty. However, Carter did find 2 coffins in another tomb, one of which belonged to Hatshepsut's wet nurse and the other to an unknown woman. In 2006, a team of specialists decided to investigate whether that mysterious lady was the queen herself. They found a molar tooth in a wooden box with Hatshepsut's name on it, and when they compared it to a gap in the mummy's mouth, it was a perfect match. Ramses II was a pretty impressive ruler, but it was his mummy that eventually made history. Now, we don't hear too much about his daddy. Okay, I'll stop. Ramses is considered to be the most powerful pharaoh in all of Egypt, as he reigned for a whopping 6 decades. He also lived to be over 90 years old. Now that's pretty amazing, considering the time he lived in. Ramses II supposedly had over 100 offspring too. Talk about a big family. When he passed away, his body was originally buried in the Valley of the Kings, but some sneaky guys tried to rob his tomb of all his treasures. Officials back in the day weren't having any of that though, so they moved his body to a secret location to keep it safe. Fast forward to the 1800s, and Ramses II's mummy was discovered along with a bunch of other rulers and important officials. But it wasn't in the best condition, so archaeologists flew it to Paris to get it, pampered. Problem was, he couldn't just be transported into another country. The only solution available was to give Ramses II his own passport. His occupation was listed as king, and the document even featured his photo. Most mummies aren't necessarily known for having the most hydrated skin. But that of an ancient woman, also known as Lady Di, proves otherwise. No, not that Lady Di. This wealthy lady from ancient times was discovered in an ornate tomb in 1971, and she looked fabulous, if we can say so about a mummy. Thanks to the special conditions in her tomb, like the moisture in the environment and the lack of oxygen, her body was almost perfectly preserved. Her skin was soft, her hair was on point, and she was still flexible. The museum that now proudly displays her mummy also shows a ton of fancy items that were buried with her, like dinnerware and musical instruments. Archaeologists investigated the mummy further and discovered that she passed away from a heart attack at around 50 years old. Even though it hasn't been around for over 2,000 years, Lady Di is still making history. The mummy of Otzi the Iceman was discovered in the Alps in 1991. Austrian authorities initially thought he was a modern mountaineer because he was so well preserved. Turns out, he was actually from the Copper Age. He was found in a mountain pass over 10,000 feet above sea level. Through studying his mummy, we've learned so much about life in Copper Age Europe. For example, we know that he was a native of Central Europe and enjoyed eating meat. He also suffered from arthritis, narrowing arteries, and intestinal problems. But he likely used acupuncture and medicinal herbs to treat these conditions. And apparently, he was pretty handy with tools. He sharpened them just days before his untimely demise. Who knows if he was expecting trouble or just getting ready for some routine work. Now, King Tut and his story is most likely the one that made all mummies famous. This pharaoh passed away at the young age of 19, more than 3,000 years ago. But his mummy is still one of the most well-known in the world. When his tomb was opened in 1922, people went wild because it was still intact, unlike many other royal tombs. It had some seriously blinged-out coffins, including one made of solid gold. Not only did Tut's tomb give us a glimpse into ancient Egyptian history, but his mummy also taught us a lot about the time he lived in. DNA analysis helped identify his parents and revealed that the pharaoh had a rare bone disorder that might have made walking a bit tough. Now, Ginger is most likely one of the coolest mummies you'll ever hear about. He's like a time traveler from 5,000 years ago who's still looking fly with his golden hair and perfectly preserved nails. Ginger was discovered in Egypt and is believed to be the earliest known mummified body. Before people even knew about mummification, they used to place bodies in shallow graves in the hot, dry sand. And since the sand absorbed all the water, bacteria couldn't reproduce and the body was preserved naturally. Now, scientists are not sure if Ginger's preservation was intentional or not, but since he was buried with some pottery vessels, it's likely that whoever buried him knew some serious preservation techniques. If you want to meet Ginger in person, he's currently chilling at the British Museum. One Dutch art collector bought a statue from Asia and ended up finding a weird discovery. The statue contained a mummy hidden inside. Unfortunately, the body was too fragile to move, so they had to leave it there. The coolest part is that this mummy is over 1,000 years old and was on display for 200 years before being encased in the statue. When scientists did a CT scan, they found out that the mummy was filled with paper scraps covered in writings. Experts think he might have done this thing called self-mummification, which is a pretty intense process involving a special diet and tea that makes your body less prone to bacteria. Only a few people could handle this ritual, and those who managed to do that were seriously respected. No other Egyptian queen has baffled scientists and historians like the stunning Nefertiti. Based on her statues, she was known for her slender neck, wide eyes, and high cheekbones. Her name translates to "the beautiful woman has come." Talk about living up to your name, huh? Even though she wasn't a pharaoh herself, Nefertiti still managed to leave a lasting impression. Written records suggest that, as a wife and queen, she held an incredibly influential role. Because of her power, she was indeed admired, but she also managed to make quite a lot of enemies throughout her life. She was also related to King Tut, but not biologically. Rather, she was his stepmother. So far, locals have yet to identify her mummy, but that may soon change. A local Egyptologist who has been busy excavating tombs in the Valley of the Kings has found 2 mummies that he believes could be Nefertiti and her daughter. According to specialists, we may soon finally get a definitive answer about the identity of these 2 mummies. And if one of them does turn out to be Nefertiti, we could be in for a real treat. DNA analysis and CT scans of the mummy could give us the most complete and accurate image of the queen that we've ever seen. It's crazy to think that we've only scratched the surface of what lies beneath modern-day Egypt. Nefertiti ruled during a time of great power and prosperity in Egypt, but unfortunately passed away in a period of social turmoil, leading to her gravesite being lost. Now, where's my mummy?
There are countless doors all over the world that haven't been opened for decades, and even centuries. The question is why? It seems that nowadays you can open any door you want. The truth is that some doors were sealed for a grave reason. And so far, nobody has found out what treasures and mysteries they hide. Here are 4 doors that keep their secrets all too well. The Taj Mahal. First up, we've got the Taj Mahal in India, one of the most romantic places in the world. Shah Jahan commissioned it in 1631 and dedicated it to his 3rd wife, who he loved like crazy. They were married for 19 years and had a whopping 14 kids together. But unfortunately, she passed away while giving birth to their last baby. Shah Jahan was heartbroken and decided to build an epic tomb to remember her by. The construction took a whopping 20 years to finish. The building has quite an interesting layout. The design is super unusual with these 4 massive 130-foot tall minarets that stand on the corners of a huge platform. They're not just there for looks. Back in the 17th century, architects were having some serious issues with buildings collapsing under their own weight. So, the chief architect of the Taj Mahal made sure to place those minarets as far away from the tomb as possible. And he even tilted them in a way so that if they did fall, they wouldn't wreck the rest of the Taj Mahal. Talk about planning ahead. The Taj Mahal is hiding some crazy secrets. There are sealed rooms all over the place that nobody is allowed to enter. And if you check out photos of the building from the riverside, you can spot 2 basements. But guess what? They're sealed up too. Nobody knows what's inside or why they've been locked up since the time of Shah Jahan. Apparently, there's a good reason why those rooms are off limits. Some researchers think that they were built using marble, which turns into a different substance called calcium carbonate if it's exposed to carbon dioxide. And when that happens, little bits of marble start chipping off like crazy. To make matters worse, there's no air flowing into these rooms. That means that if too much CO2 builds up in the basement, the 4 minarets could collapse. But wait, there's more. Some people think that the body of Shah Jahan's wife can be found in one of these sealed-up rooms in pristine condition. Why not? Who knows what the mysterious rooms might keep? The Great Sphinx of Giza. The Great Sphinx of Giza is shrouded in mystery. It's not just the largest monolith statue in the world, but it's also a hybrid creature with a woman's head and a lion's body that originates from Egyptian and Greek mythology. It's also very ancient. It's estimated to be around 4,500 years old. The construction of this marvel took about 3 years and required 100 workers who were not slaves and were treated with delicacies like sheep and goat meat. It is also thought that it used to be much more massive than it is now. Archaeologists found huge stone blocks and abandoned toolkits near the site. However, the real secrets of the Sphinx lie underground, near its paws. A group of scientists used a seismograph to detect 2 hidden chambers beneath the Sphinx's paws. Some people think that these rooms might be the legendary Hall of Records, which holds ancient scrolls revealing the secrets of the universe. I mean, that's way cooler than any library I've ever been to. Rumor has it that the Egyptians even had info on Atlantis stashed down there, which is like a super old version of a conspiracy theory. Unfortunately, we can't go on an adventure to check it out just yet. The chambers presumably have 2 entrances, but both remain sealed. The researchers haven't yet received the green light to check out their theory. Let's hope they won't keep us in suspense forever. Sri Padmanabhaswamy Temple. This temple is located in the beautiful state of Kerala in India. This temple is famous for more than just its breathtaking beauty. Underneath the temple there are 6 vaults, creatively named A, B, C, D, E, and F. The enormous iron doors to these chambers add to the mystery of what's behind them. A few years back, the authorities decided to open these vaults to the world, but it wasn't an easy task. You can't just open the doors and enter the vaults. It required a lot of work. It took them a while, but finally, in 2011, they opened 5 of the 6 chambers. And guess what they found? Tons of treasure. Bags of gold, precious gemstones, and priceless diamond jewelry. The estimated worth of everything found in the vaults is a whopping $1 trillion. It's like the temple was the real-life inspiration for Aladdin's Cave of Wonders. But wait, I said 5 of the 6. What happened to the last one? Vault B has remained closed, but not for lack of trying. They simply didn't manage to open it. There is even a belief that it's fatally cursed. Legend says that only a saint or sage can break the curse by chanting a specific mantra. But no one has been able to do this yet, presumably because we don't have saints or sages at our disposal. There is also rumor that in the 30s some temple invaders tried to enter Vault B to do some good old looting. But they never reached their target. Apparently terrible snakes materialized out of nowhere and chased the gang away. But of course, this is just an urban legend, and there is not proof of that. However, it is said that the Auditor General dealing with the temple claimed that Vault B had been opened at least 7 times since 1990, and nothing bad happened to anyone who entered. Who knows? Maybe we should send Indiana Jones to check it out. The First Emperor's Tomb. Deep under a hill, completely undisturbed and surrounded by dangerous traps, lies an ancient 2,000-year-old tomb. It belongs to Qin Shi Huang, the first emperor of China. He was born in the Qin state and became king when he was just a boy. But when he grew up and gained full power, he united the warring states ancient China was divided into by conquering them. After that, he created the Qin dynasty. When he died in 210 BCE, they buried him deep underground in a massive tomb. And when I say massive, I mean massive! Back in 1974, some farmers in Xi'an, China, stumbled upon something strange while digging a well, a huge terracotta soldier. This discovery led to an extensive archaeological dig that has continued for over 40 years, revealing a collection of thousands of clay soldiers. The unique thing about these soldiers is that each one has its own unique features, from hairstyles to facial expressions. It's believed that there could be up to 8,000 of these soldiers, but only 2,000 have been found so far. Interestingly, the central tomb, which is believed to be the resting place of the emperor, is still untouched. In ancient records, there are references to a vast underground city that the emperor built, complete with scenic towers, palaces, and whatnot. Sima Qian, a Han Dynasty historian, wrote that the tomb was adorned with treasures and had space for hundreds of officials, but the lack of technology to properly examine the site is what's holding things up. Qin Shi Huang was surrounded by liquid mercury in his tomb, with two of the streams representing the major rivers of China, Yellow River and Yangtze. The ancient Chinese believed that mercury could provide immortality, but it could have also caused the emperor's death since he regularly took mercury pills to prolong his life. The dangerous levels of mercury contamination in the soil near the tomb are the main reason why scientists are reluctant to explore it. It could be very dangerous both for people and for the environment. Now, if I had to choose which door to open, I'd probably go for the one that doesn't lead to a tomb surrounded by poisonous mercury. Call me crazy, but I'd like to avoid any potential health hazards.
A gruesome discovery took place in Egypt some years ago. You want to hear about it? 16 human hands, carefully buried in 4 eerie pits. They didn't look too much like human hands at first, since they were abnormally large, but they were. Weirdly, there were only right hands, no left hands were in sight. It turned out that it points to the practice of an ancient dark ritual. Old Egyptian art and tales talked of a ceremony where warriors would present the right hand of their adversaries as proof of victory and ask for gold in return. Egyptians believed in the afterlife, so cutting off someone's hand meant you cut off their power eternally. Guaranteeing this type of defeat was interesting to the winning party. Here, the fight was between Egyptians versus Hyksos, who lived in what was once known as Canaan. Egypt has always been the center of some history-changing findings, and some time ago, this papyrus was found. If we stretched it open, it would be just a tad bigger than the height of a skyscraper. The world's tiniest skyscraper, which is located in Wichita Falls, Texas. When humans didn't write on their notes app, they wrote on this thing, made from the medulla of a papyrus plant. Around 2,000 years ago, ancient Egyptians wrote something reminiscent of a book where they describe most of their funerary traditions and their visions of the afterlife. It's considered one of the most important texts from ancient Egypt and is still sold in bookstores to this day. This ancient manuscript was unearthed from a chamber located just south of the Pyramid of Djoser, located in Saqqara. Oh yes, Djoser is the oldest pyramid in Egypt and not the Giza pyramids like most people think. So recently, the site of Saqqara buzzed with excited archaeologists who probably found one of Egypt's oldest complete mummies. They believe that this beautiful and well-preserved mummy was that of a wealthy man. He was discovered in a deep shaft, covered in layers of gold leaves. There are many symbols that show he was an important and wealthy man, like the band he wore on his head, the bracelet on his chest, and the fact that he was embalmed with a tunic, which was reserved for Egypt's finest. The most exciting part of the entire discovery was finding the resting place sealed with mortar, just as the ancient Egyptians had left it 4,300 years ago. Now this may sound weird, but back in 2008, archaeologists discovered a missing pyramid. Now it went missing because it deteriorated over the span of 4,000 years. Today, you can only see its base. It was a pretty important site back in ancient times. It is said that around the area of the pyramid, the ancients hosted a special type of ceremony where high priests would carry mummified remains of sacred bulls. Now, here's a fun fact. Ancient Egyptians believed that Apis bulls were earthly incarnations of the city deity of Memphis and was connected to rites of fertility. It wasn't just any Apis bull, though. They needed to be all black, with a single white mark between its horns and a bunch of very specific characteristics. They were selected by the local priests and honored until they passed away. After that, they were mummified and buried in underground galleries. Meanwhile, this missing pyramid sort of disappeared around the 1800s. It was a German archaeologist who first found it in the village of Saqqara. He called it the Headless Pyramid when he first found it. But then, years after the official discovery, the desert sand came along and covered the whole thing. There were some excavations between the 19th and 20th centuries, but they weren't too systematic. That's why scientists were so thrilled when they dug an entire pyramid's base after removing the 25-foot mound of sand that was covering it. Oh, And it turns out American archaeologists are excavating a cemetery in Egypt that could contain over 1 million mummified bodies. So far, archaeologists have dug around 1,700 mummies. One of the main differences from other classic Egyptian mummies is that these people weren't kings and pharaohs. They were commoners that most likely lived about 1,500 years ago, when Egypt was controlled by the Roman and Byzantine empires. The name of the cemetery is cool, though, the Way of the Water Buffalo, just in case you want to check it out on your next trip. Other than bulls and buffaloes, ancient Egyptians also liked baboons. Are you seeing a pattern here? In the beginning of the 20th century, archaeologists discovered a site filled with mummified baboons in a place called, guess what? The Valley of Monkeys. An animal wouldn't have been mummified if it wasn't considered important. Certain animals were more important than others, since they were linked to specific deities. Jackals were connected to Anubis, the ancient god of the afterlife, and cats were likened to the female deity Bastet. Baboons were a pretty big deal, since they were believed to be connected to Thoth, the deity of wisdom and advisor to Ra, one of Egypt's supreme deities. The archaeologists who studied these animals weren't too happy. They think these baboons were kept inside and were deprived of sunlight for most of their lives. They had extreme vitamin D deficiencies and they were poorly fed. Maybe Thoth got angry with these baboon keepers. Just a guess. Since there's never a boring day for archaeologists in Egypt, they also found human mummies with golden tongues. Since Egyptians were all about the afterlife, they believed that golden tongues might help a person speak once they pass to the other side. I mean, it's a long shot, but hey, why not? Some of these mummies were placed in wooden coffins with goods, such as necklaces, pottery, golden artifacts in the shape of lotus flowers and scarab beetles, and iPhones. Just kidding. A new temple was also unearthed recently in Egypt. Scientists believe it was dedicated to honor Zeus Cassios. That deity would be a cross between Zeus, the almighty Greek deity of the sky, and Mount Cassios. While digging around the Sinai Peninsula in Egypt, archaeologists spotted 2 pink granite columns poking out of the ground, and bingo. They believe these columns represented the temple's front gate and collapsed during an earthquake many years ago. And speaking of deities, there weren't only super serious deities. Recently, scientists unearthed a golden ring in a city south of Cairo. No, Frodo, it's not magical. It was a normal gold ring, but it had the depiction of the deity of fun, officially named Bes. This deity is often described in sacred texts as a happy chubby dwarf. Today, many tattoos we get are sorta deprived of any sense and are made of aesthetic purposes only. In ancient Egypt, though, women would get tattoos as a token of protection for childbirth. That's what scientists think, at least. Around the Nile region, scientists found some mummies that had well-preserved tattoos, which is a rarity since the skin deteriorates so easily. 2 of these women tattooed their lower backs, and the drawings were simple. They were mostly pictures, including that same chubby dwarf we just talked about, Bes. He also had a side hustle as the protector of women during childbirth. Now, would you believe me if I told you ancient Egyptians invented robots? No? Well, that's because that's not entirely true. Sure, they were astronomers, mathematicians, and engineers, and somehow they also squeezed an eccentric invention into that package – an automated deity some scientists called Hathor. This wooden statue had been in the Metropolitan Museum of Art for years before someone noticed its secret. With the help of an X-ray machine, specialists discovered a mechanical operating system inside it. The pulley-like axis goes from the statue's shoulder to her left leg. When the system rotates, the statue raises and lowers her hand. Hey, pick me! I got my hand up.
Let's face it, most ancient tombs have been looted at least once. No matter how scary the rumors could have been, most mummies were open to. But one. This is the Bashiri mummy, and it puzzles everyone so much that nobody dares to see what's inside. Meet Howard, but you must know him already if you're into Egyptian history. He's primarily famous for discovering King Tut's tomb back in 1922. But few people know that before this revolutionary discovery, he had probably found another mummy. It happened in 1919, and it goes by several names, either the Bashiri mummy or the mummy of Pacheri, or the untouchable one. Some reports say that Howard stumbled upon the Bashiri mummy in Luxor's Valley of the Kings, just where he would later find Tut's tomb. Despite this find, not much is known about this particular mummy. The reason why it's still unharmed in any way is not because of some superstitions, but because nobody is sure that they can undo what they do if something goes wrong. The mummy is so intricately wrapped that researchers never unfurled it for fear of irreversible damage. The golden rule of anyone who works with antiquities: if you're not sure you can't make it better or preserve it unchanged, do not touch it. History knows many examples of ancient relics ruined beyond repair, say Ecce Homo, or smiling statue restoration. The delicate fabric that covers the mummy's face has this cool design that kind of looks like a pyramid. The researchers are not 100% sure, but this might be the only one of its kind with that embalming style. But without knowing the ancient technique, it's next to impossible not to ruin the mummy while unwrapping and wrapping it back. Back in the day, people, both experts and looters, would unwrap mummies for all sorts of reasons, mostly to study them. Luckily, these days, we have advanced tech that lets us check out what's inside a sarcophagus without having to unwrap anything. After taking a closer look at the Bashiri mummy, researchers figured out that it belonged to a man who was around 5.5 feet tall and lived during the Ptolemaic era, which makes this mummy roughly 2,300 years old. The Egypt Museum shared that the X-ray scan also uncovered an inscription of the guy's name, but it's a bit tricky to tell if it says Pacheri or Nenu, adding to the intrigue. The museum also pointed out that the fancy casing the mummy is in features all sorts of decorated scenes. You can see the mummy lying on a bed, flanked by deities Isis and Nephthys, along with the 4 sons of Horus. Plus, there are 2 images of the funerary god Anubis at the feet of the casing. By the way, Bashiri mummy is not the only one that has remained untouched. This is Issa Temkebde, and Gaston Maspero, a French archaeologist, made the decision to leave her mummy untouched, wanting to keep her resting peacefully since she was in such amazing shape. He did mention, though, that her tomb had been raided long ago. Thanks to some X-ray work, we learned more about the mummy. The scans revealed a few artifacts still wrapped up with the wife of a high priest, including amulets around her neck, right arm, and forehead. The X-rays also showed she had some dental issues and arthritis in her knees. While she passed away as an older woman, it's tough to pinpoint her exact age. However, various sources from her son's reign indicate that she was held in high regard in the kingdom. Isitemkebd served as the sister wife of Penejim II. You got me right, they were related by blood and were siblings, but back then it was pretty common to get married this way to preserve the purity of the bloodline. Say that to Habsburg, duh. Their chase for purity only led to inbreeding and the notorious Habsburg's jaw. Right, I guess we should not judge ancient Egyptian rules and morals, but what we can say for sure is that both Bashiri and Isitemkebd were incredibly lucky to stay untouched. The odds were not in King Tut's favor, though. The researchers' work hit him hard. The tomb itself was discovered in 1922, but it wasn't until 1925 that the nested coffins were opened during an excavation. The outer coffin, held together with silver pins, opened up to show another coffin shaped like a mummy, decorated with colorful glass and flower garlands. There were worries about the king's mummy because it had been exposed to moisture. The middle coffin was pretty heavy and didn't have any handles, so they had to be super careful taking it out. Inside the innermost coffin, which was solid gold and wrapped in a red cloth, they found the royal mummy, and this all went down on October 28, 1925. Tutankhamun's mummy, measuring about 6.07 feet, fit snugly into the innermost coffin, which was 6.17 feet long. You can already tell there was a problem, right? Imagine how hard it is to extract something as fragile as an ancient dried-up mummy, especially when there's not much room for maneuver. Plus, the mummy looked sus. It was pitch black. Howard Carter, the lead archaeologist of the expedition, estimated that around 2 buckets worth of oils had been poured over the mummy. But care had been taken to avoid the mask and feet. It was made to preserve him better. The body was positioned at a slight angle in the coffin, and there was a noticeable difference in the amount of dark oils on the right and left sides, indicating that the coffin might have tilted while being lowered into the sarcophagus. This oil created moisture inside the coffins, and over time, it reacted chemically, which Carter described as a sort of slow, spontaneous combustion, leading to the carbonization of the linen wrappings. Unfortunately, the combination of heat and moisture took a toll on the mummy's trappings as well. The crooked flail fell apart, the resin scarab cracked, and the threads holding the hands and mummy's bands started to decay, making everything quite fragile. Plus, the oils hardened over the years, effectively gluing the mummy and mask to the coffin's bottom. To try and separate the mummy from the inner and middle coffins, they were placed in the sun for several hours, reaching temperatures of 149 degrees Fahrenheit. Despite this effort, the mummy remained stuck, so the initial examination had to be done right where it was. The first part of Tutankhamun's mummy the researchers checked out was his lower legs and feet, meaning they started the examination from the bottom up. As they peeled back the bandages, they uncovered the first of many treasures wrapped up with the king. They took their time to carefully document and photograph everything they found. The inner layers of bandages were in pretty bad shape, mostly turning to dust, making it tough to figure out how everything was originally wrapped. Still, the overall methods matched what was seen in other nobles' mummies from that time. Lots of folded linen pads were used to shape the torso and thighs. The outer and inner bandages were made from fine linen, while the middle layers were coarser. They had some intricate bandaging around the shoulders and chest with a similar style around the groin. Each limb, along with fingers and toes, which were fitted with gold caps, was wrapped separately. Tutankhamun even wore gold foil sandals on his feet. They hoped to separate the mummy from the coffin by removing the outer bandages, but the resins had stuck the body to the coffin. So, the researchers ended up chiseling it out. To do this, they had to cut the torso in half at the hips and disarticulate the arms to continue unwrapping. Each part was treated with hot paraffin wax for stability, and later the hands and feet were reattached with resin. Finally, they used hot knives to detach the head from the mask. To check the teeth, it was decided to make an incision around the jaw and neck, which was later fixed with resin. So technically, the scientists did all they could to preserve the mummy, but still, in a way, it ended up being damaged beyond repair. What do you think? Should they have left it in the coffin? Or did they do the right thing? Let us know in the comments.
Throughout the years, scientists have made some discoveries that seem to hint at the existence of extraterrestrial life. But do they really? Let's find out. In 1976, NASA's Viking Mars landers detected chemical signatures that could be a sign of extraterrestrial life. During one of the experiments, Martian soil was mixed with special nutrients and then tested for the production of methane gas, and the test's result was positive. In other words, something in the soil was metabolizing these nutrients and producing the gas. Unfortunately, other experiments conducted on board the landers didn't show any evidence of life. It caused NASA to declare the result a false positive. And still, some scientists keep standing by the finding, arguing that the experiments on board were ill-equipped to look for a key indicator of life, organic molecules. In 1977, an Ohio State University radio telescope detected a bizarre pulse of radiation coming from someplace near the Sagittarius constellation. It lasted 37 seconds and was so unexpected that the astronomer who was monitoring the data at that moment scribbled, "Wow," on the telescope's printout. The thing is that the radio frequency of the signal is internationally banned on Earth. The signal could be the result of a supermassive astronomical event, or it could be sent by some kind of intelligent life with immensely powerful transmitters. So far, this mystery has remained unexplained. In 1996, NASA scientists announced that they had found something that could be microbes in a potato-shaped chunk of Martian rock. The meteorite might have been blasted off the surface of Mars in a collision. It had been wandering the solar system for about 15 million years before it fell in Antarctica. Analyses showed that the meteorite contained some organic molecules and tiny particles of the mineral called magnetite. It's sometimes found in bacteria living on our planet. NASA researchers used an electron microscope and announced that they had spotted nanobacteria. But since that time, this evidence has been called into question a few times. Some experts say that the particles of magnitude are not really similar to those found on our planet, and Earth's contaminants are likely to be the source of organic molecules. Jupiter's moon Europa has a bizarre red tinge. Some of the theories explaining this phenomenon have suggested the reason is frozen bits of bacteria, which are also responsible for the mysterious infrared signal the moon gives off. But this theory hasn't been proven yet. The existence of life in Venus's clouds might explain curious anomalies in the composition of the planet's atmosphere. Solar radiation and lightning are supposed to generate tons of carbon monoxide on Venus, but in reality, this gas is rare, as if something is removing it. Another weird thing is the presence of both hydrogen sulfide and sulfur dioxide in the atmosphere. Usually, these two readily react together. That's why it's rare to find them coexisting. The only explanation can be that some process keeps churning them out. But probably the most mysterious is the presence of carbonyl sulfide. The thing is, on Earth, it's only produced by microbes and not by some inorganic process. Some experts believe that microbes might be living in the atmosphere of Venus. The surface of the planet, scorching hot and acidic, isn't very suitable for the development of life, but up in the atmosphere it's moist and hospitable, with a pressure similar to Earth and pleasant temperatures. But again, we haven't received any solid proof yet. In 2003, scientists discussed the possibility that the traces of sulfur on Jupiter's moon Europa could be the waste products of colonies of underground bacteria. The compounds were first discovered by the Galileo space probe, which also found some evidence of a volcanically warmed ocean beneath the icy crust of the moon. The sulfur signatures look similar to the waste products of bacteria living in the surface ice covering lakes in Antarctica on Earth. But other scientists rejected the idea. They argued that the sulfur could have come from the neighboring moon. Io there, it's found in abundance.
Are we really by ourselves in the universe? It's a daunting question that's been haunting us for centuries. No wonder scientists have tried to come up with all sorts of ideas as to why. One of the strangest theories concerning our lack of contact with other life forms is named the dark forest theory. Let's start small. Well, sort of. We'll focus on our Milky Way for now to better understand this theory. Our cosmic neighborhood is a galactic wonderland, sprinkled with 200 billion twinkling stars and maybe around 100 billion planets. So let's get hypothetical for a moment and say a tiny part of those habitats hosts life. Further, out of those life-bearing planets, a few might have evolved into intelligent beings. Given that, you'd think we'd be knee-deep in weird-looking neighbors, some of whom might be actively trying to find us or might just be out there, waiting to be discovered. Now, let's put a little science into this science fiction scenario. We have something called the Drake equation, which is a kind of universal roll call that estimates how many smart civilizations could pop up in our galaxy. You can think of this equation as the super smart roadmap. By playing around with a few important factors, the equation hints that there should be around 20 civilizations just in our galactic backyard. So why haven't we stumbled upon any yet? This theory isn't an easy task. It's a mixed bag of multiple variables, like the average number of planets per solar system that could potentially host life, or the rate at which stars suitable for intelligent life are formed. A tricky part here is that astronomers have yet to solidify the exact values of these variables, which means our calculations are just approximations for now. But back to the Milky Way, shall we? Feed in our hypothetical assumptions, crunch the numbers, and you get at least 20 civilizations. Yet somehow, our cosmic switchboard remains weirdly silent. How come? This radio silence has its own name, too, the Fermi paradox, named after the guy who first thought, "Hey, where is everybody?" over 50 years ago. Since then, we've had a lot of different theories trying to solve this mystery, all tinkering with different aspects of the Drake equation. Some folks think the appearance of life is a rare event. Others think that getting from bacteria to advanced beings is the tricky part. Yet, some reckon that civilizations might either wipe themselves out after a short lifespan or never even get to invent something they could communicate with. But there's one theory that tops all others in its creepiness: the dark forest theory. According to it, the universe is a huge cosmic version of a haunted forest. And other types of creatures are out there, playing a game of hide and seek. They're intentionally keeping silent. Why? Well, the dark forest theory was best explained in a sci-fi novel, and the rationale goes something like this. For starters, every life form wants to stay alive. I'll buy that. If we go with that assumption, it's impossible to be sure whether other life forms might harm you if they get the chance. So, the safest bet is to take them out before they find the right time to do the same to you. Frankly speaking, it's the universe's version of the survival of the fittest. In this scenario, making contact with others becomes the most dangerous game, as it could lead to your location being traced and you being wiped out. How human. This results in everyone keeping quiet, a kind of universal shush, where every civilization tries to hide in utter cosmic silence. But hey, is this just an idea good for a thrilling novel, or does it have some real-world implications? Well, the theory was suggested by scientist David Brin as a possible explanation for the lack of radio evidence for non-Earth-like life. He went as far as imagining it would be robots that would do the dirty work of wiping out civilizations. But how realistic is this theory anyway? Well, it doesn't require us to assume a lot of stuff about the behavior of all foreign civilizations. Just one advanced race behaving this way could explain our observed reality. And it might explain why we've not picked up any advanced radio chatter despite a century of eavesdropping. It's possible that other creatures like us are too terrified of being noticed and have gone radio silent on purpose. But, and it's a big but, like mine, it does base itself on the notion that other species share our level of risk aversion and logic, or that there's a rogue civilization out there, picking off anyone they perceive as a threat. And that's a pretty significant assumption. If that doesn't sound creepy, this next piece of information certainly will. For about a century now, we've been shouting our existence into the cosmos. If this theory proves to be correct, every other civilization within 100 light-years of us might be getting our signals and knowing exactly where we are. And if we have reasons to hide from them, as suggested by some like Stephen Hawking, we might already be in trouble. But what if this theory isn't true? What if, sooner than we'd like to imagine, weird galactic creatures will indeed try to reach us? The truth is, most of us wouldn't even know what to do. Hey, let's not get over ourselves. In fact, some scientists are tackling this issue head-on. For the first time since the 1980s, specialists are trying to cook up a how-to guide for when we inevitably bump into cosmic neighbors. For instance, some researchers believe we've got to do more than just worry about how these life forms could shake up our world. If they send any type of radio signals down here, we've got to think about our reply. What are we going to say? Hey, we're humans. Nice to meet you. Absolutely not. We've got to do better than that. See, the only plan we've had till now came from a rough blueprint dating from 1989. This guide is a bit wishy-washy on what to do when the entire world gets the outer worldly text. Mostly it says, hey, let's share the news with everyone. But then what? If we confirm it's legit, officials will need to ask the United Nations for advice. But hey, does the United Nations even have a plan? Maybe, who knows? We've been doing loads of space exploring lately. Some say we've stumbled upon water on Mars. Others are sure we've spotted some planets that could be twins to Earth. So, the idea of finding life elsewhere isn't that far-fetched. But even after 100 years of trying to chat with cosmic beings, it's still a one-sided conversation. This new protocol isn't just about chatting up outsiders. It's also going to act as our cosmic voicemail, checking messages from outer space. It aims not just to decode the external lingo. It's also planning to figure out what these messages could mean for us. The plan is also to draft reports about how different policies could impact us and set up guidelines on how to respond to these space texts. So, will we ever get a message from our cosmic mates? Only time will tell. But what we do know is that we just can't wing it. We can't be caught off guard and start a planet-wide frenzy when we get that otherworldly WhatsApp. We gotta have a plan, and we gotta have it ready for when we're face-to-face with the real deal. I mean, we've come across a lot of potential such sightings, but none of them proved to be genuine. On that note, U.S. authorities checked over 100 cases of weird stuff going on in the skies. I'll spare you the details, but not one green creature was ever found. More like drones and similar stuff floating around. So, as we stand on the cusp of this potentially game-changing event, we must strive to be prepared. Whether our intergalactic neighbors drop us a text tomorrow or centuries from now, we need a plan. After all, this could change everything we know about our universe and our place within it.
For centuries, people believed that all swans were white because that was all they had ever seen. They thought it was a universal truth. Then one day, someone discovered a black swan. It was a surprising and unexpected event because it went against what everyone believed. So yeah, the theory is named after this idea of a rare and unpredictable event that goes against our assumptions and expectations. It isn't related to the Darren Aronofsky movie. You know, the one starring Natalie Portman as a committed dancer? Nassim Nicholas Taleb is the person who named this theory. He suggested that these types of super rare and unexpected events are impossible to predict, but they can have a massive impact on individuals, businesses, and societies. The theory was originally used to explain financial markets, but has found its way into various fields. Taleb calls those extremely rare events black swans. Now, these events are so rare that the usual tools of probability and prediction, like the normal distribution, don't really work. They rely on large populations and past data, which we don't have for rare events. So, trying to use statistics based on the past won't help us predict black swans. Let's dive into some examples of past black swan events. The rise of the internet is actually a great example. It's now hard to imagine a time when people couldn't Google their burning questions or watch funny cat videos online. The internet's growth and impact caught many by surprise. It transformed the way we communicate, access information, and even buy fluffy socks without leaving the couch. A digital revolution nobody truly saw coming. Recently, we found an infant black swan on the internet: the emergence of cryptocurrencies. Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies created new forms of decentralized digital currency and disrupted traditional financial systems. Then we have the invention of smartphones. Picture a world where phones were chunky, had buttons, and only made calls. Suddenly, boom! Smartphones turned everyone into walking wizards with tiny devices in their pockets. From taking selfies to driving with GPS, these pocket-sized marvels changed the game, surprising us all with their incredible capabilities. Here we can also mention the rise of social media. The emergence of platforms like Instagram revolutionized communication, enabling people to connect and share information globally. The creation of the internal combustion engine was a game changer too. Long ago, horses trotted along the streets, leaving a different kind of horsepower behind. But then, ta-da! The internal combustion engine roared to life, propelling cars and transforming transportation forever. Who would have thought that a mechanical contraption could replace our equine friends and pave the way for road trips and drive-thrus? What about black swans related to our bodies, like decoding DNA? Once upon a time, DNA was a mysterious code, like a secret language of life itself. Then, science unraveled its secrets, revealing the blueprint that makes us who we are. This groundbreaking discovery in genetics opened doors to medical advancements and personalized medicine. Imagine you're a scientist working in a lab. One day, you forget to clean up your petri dishes. You know, those plastic or glass things commonly used for growing microorganisms. Then, you leave for a vacation. When you return, you find a happy accident. A mold called penicillin has grown on one of the dishes and exterminated the bacteria around it. That's what happened to Alexander Fleming. This accidental encounter with mold led to the discovery of penicillin. Hello, one of the most important medications in history. At the time, bacterial infections were a major threat to human health. Fleming's chance observation opened the door to a whole new way of fighting infections and revolutionized medicine. Now let's take a peek at Europe in the 14th to 17th centuries. It was like a scene from a historical movie. People are emerging from the Dark Ages, embracing newfound knowledge and experiencing an explosion of creativity. This period is none other than the Renaissance. It's a black swan too, because during that time, there was a tremendous surge in artistic, scientific, and philosophical achievements. Incredible minds like Leonardo da Vinci, Michelangelo, and Galileo were pushing the boundaries of human knowledge. The Renaissance was like a giant wake-up call for Europe, shaking off the cobwebs of the past and embracing a new way of thinking. It was a black swan event because it changed the course of history and ushered in a period of immense progress and innovation. It reminds us that sometimes, out of the blue, a wave of inspiration and brilliance can transform the world. Let's take a step back, or 1,000 steps further, and consider the moon landing. The Apollo 11 moon landing in 1969 was an extraordinary feat of human achievement and a positive black swan event. It showed humanity's potential for exploration and scientific advancement, inspiring generations and pushing the boundaries of what was deemed possible. Not all black swans are good and positive though. When it comes to the stock market, a black swan event is like a super rare market crash that goes way beyond what anyone could expect. We're talking about events that statistically should hardly ever happen. The Great Depression is a classic example of a black swan event. It happened in 1929, but its effects lasted for a long time. The economy was booming with happy days. Then, the stock market crashed and everything went haywire. It was almost impossible to predict, like trying to guess the lottery numbers but on a global scale. The world had never seen such a massive economic meltdown. At its peak, 25% of Americans found themselves without a job. The economy took a nosedive. The US GDP dropped by 30%. Over 9,000 banks waved the white flag and said, "We're out." Oh, and there's something called a gray swan event too. It's not as rare as a black swan, but it's still an outlier. The good news is that gray swans are a bit more predictable than black swans, so we can better prepare for them and take some measures to protect ourselves. Let's play a little thought game. Imagine we're weighing a bunch of people, and one of them happens to be the heaviest person in the world. Even if that person weighs 2,000 pounds, it doesn't really make a big difference in the overall average weight of everyone we weigh. It's like a drop in the bucket. This shows that extreme outliers like this super heavy person don't have a huge impact on the average. Now let's do a similar experiment, but this time with wealth. We gather a group of people, including one billionaire. What if that billionaire's wealth is 99% of the total group's wealth? Unlike the weight example here, the outlier dominates everything else. This is what Taleb calls extremistan, where a small number of people have a huge portion of wealth, while others have very little. Taleb argues that the modern world operates more like money. It's mostly digital and not constrained by physical or biological limits. While most people don't make a lot of money, a few can make a ton. The same applies to other areas like music, book sales, and more. This winner-take-all system rewards a small number of individuals disproportionately. We tend to believe we understand why these outliers exist. We think it's all about thinking outside the box. starting a revolutionary company and working tirelessly. But what about those people who did all these things and failed? You don't often hear about them or find shelves full of books about their failures. There's a bias in the stories we hear and the information available to us. In the end, we became more vulnerable to black swans. So, whether it's a mold leading to life-saving antibiotics or an economic crisis, these events of the black swan theory show us that unexpected events can have impacts on our lives. By the way, the odds of being born are 1 in 400 trillion. For all we know and don't know, being born is an unimaginably improbable event that nobody could have truly foreseen. So if you're alive, in a sense, you're a black swan too. From the tiniest ants to the mightiest galaxies, why do things work the way they do? If we imagine the universe as a giant puzzle, we already found some important pieces: electromagnetism, gravity, tiny particles, and so on. But even with all this, we can't get the full picture. We still can't figure out how everything works. What we're trying to find is the theory of everything. This is the mysterious theory that should be able to fit everything in our world together. For years, brilliant minds like Isaac Newton, Albert Einstein, Niels Bohr, and many others tried to derive this theory. But as you can imagine, it's not a simple task. Albert Einstein was one of the first to get very close to the answer. He spent his entire life watching and analyzing the world. As a result, he came up with his most famous equation: E equals mc squared. This equation tells us how energy and mass are connected. Energy can turn into matter and vice versa. But that's not enough, so he created his theories of relativity. One was called special gravity. It says nothing can go faster than light, and time can stretch or shrink depending on how fast you're moving. Then, he combined it with general relativity, which introduced gravity into the equation. He thought of gravity as the universe's way of bending space and time. Just like a fabric stretches when you place a heavy ball on it, space-time stretches when we place things like planets in it. This effect is what we call gravity. Einstein also wanted to connect gravity with the other forces, like electricity and magnetism. That way, everything could be together in harmony. And there were scientists who decided to help him with that. Their names were Theodore Kaluza and Oscar Klein. In the 1920s, they decided that it would be cool to add extra dimensions to our universe. Electromagnetism explained how electricity and magnetism work together. And now, Einstein, Kaluza, and Klein wanted to add relativity to it, like mixing several flavors of ice cream to create a super delicious universe sundae. To make this wild idea work, Kaluza and Klein had to add a whole new dimension to our world. We usually think of our world as having 3 dimensions, like length, width, and height, plus time. But these scientists created the 5th dimension, although it's all tiny and hidden, so you couldn't spot it in your everyday life. All this gave us a more or less full picture of the world. Many even thought that Einstein did it, found the theory of everything. But if only things were that simple. Unfortunately, even though Einstein was a genius, he couldn't unite everything. You know what screwed things up for him? Quantum mechanics. Quantum world turned out to be insane. When we looked at the particles, we learned that they could do magical tricks. For example, they could be in 2 places at once, or disappear and reappear again out of nowhere. Einstein couldn't explain that. He wanted things to be logical and predictable, like knowing exactly where a particle is and how fast it's going. But quantum mechanics showed that our world is much more complicated, weird, and random than what we thought. But even though Einstein didn't explain absolutely everything, his legacy still lives on. Today's scientists are picking up where he left off. So how close have we gotten to the theory of everything since then? Well, quantum mechanics tried to nominate its candidate, string theory. This hero emerged in the 1980s. Quantum physics pals had a wild idea. What if the tiniest bits of everything in our world weren't particles, but super tiny strings? Yeah, like guitar strings. Almost. They look like little dots to us, which is why we see them as tiny particles. But if we looked at them under the best microscope ever, they would look like little loops. In that case, everything in the universe is made up of these little vibrating strings. Just like different notes on a guitar string make different sounds, these tiny strings can vibrate in different ways. And each way they vibrate creates a different particle. One note might give us a particle we call an electron. Another vibration could be a particle like a photon, and so on. But there is another cool idea that string theory suggests. It suggests that our universe has more than just the usual 3 dimensions we can see, like up, down, left, right, and forward and backwards. What if there are extra hidden dimensions that these strings can wiggle in? And theorists say that they might be up to 10 or even 11 of these dimensions. At first, everyone thought that this was it. This could be the theory of everything. But, just like in the movies, when everyone thinks that they've defeated the villain, more problems pop up. String theory didn't fit the universe's rules discovered by Einstein. This is the last piece of the puzzle they've been trying to find for many years. If string theory supporters figure out how to connect their ideas with Einstein's theories of relativity, they'll finally be able to explain all the things ever. And they made some attempts. String theory began to divide into many branches. For example, it gave rise to the multiverse theory. Alright, we know that all the tiny strings can vibrate and wrap in different ways. There are many ways for each string to vibrate. The combination of their vibrations give many possible results. And there are trillions upon trillions of these strings. And just like one musical note can help to create different harmonics and songs, strings can create different versions of the universe. Each version might represent a universe with its own set of physical laws and properties. You probably heard about the parallel worlds. Well, it's a real scientific concept. The multiverse theory says that our world isn't the only one. There's an infinite number of universes and their number is constantly growing. Let's say you're baking cookies. In one universe, you make chocolate chip cookies. In another universe, you make oatmeal raisin cookies. And yet, in another universe, you make them with peanut butter. Even for such a small decision, there are a lot of parallel worlds. Something like this is very hard to even imagine. And these are only those universes that are similar to ours, where identical copies of us live. Some universes might be completely different. They might have different constants of nature, like the strength of gravity or the speed of light. They might have things that we can't even think about. Of course, this is just another theory. There's still a big debate about it in the world. It's a fascinating idea, but there's no way for us to test it with our current technologies. These universes, even if they exist, are way beyond our reach. One of them is called M-theory. It was proposed in the 90s by an awesome scientist, Edward Witten. M-theory is like a super advanced version of string theory. Just like in regular string theory, it suggests that everything in the universe is made up of tiny vibrating strings. But M-theory says that these strings aren't the only things out there. There are also things called branes, short for membranes. Imagine these branes like sheets or surfaces that exist in higher dimensions. We can't see them, but they can interact with the strings in interesting ways. M-theory was basically juggling other theories, trying to solve the problem in everything. It tried to unite every version of string theory into one big idea, and also combine all this with Einstein's ideas somehow. It also high-fived Stephen Hawking's ideas about black holes along the way. But even with M-theory, we're not at the finish line. No matter how hard we try, we still can't explain absolutely everything. The biggest problem is trying to unite relativity with quantum mechanics. So far, no one could do this. These were our attempts to come up with a theory of everything so far. Will we be able to derive it one day? Who knows? There are many tricky pieces still missing, but we keep learning and creating new tools to explore our world. And maybe one day, we'll finally find out the answer.
The space crew had been getting ready for the launch for over 3 years. The preparations for landing on the strange planet included gathering and studying rock samples in the Grand Canyon, exploring ancient volcano formations in the Nevada National Security Site, and looking into gas and lava vents, lava lakes, and pit craters in various locations in Hawaii. To be able to resist microgravity conditions, they learned how to walk obliquely by being strapped and suspended sideways and trying to move along walls. They had to test their limits through intensive diet and sleep regimens to make sure they'd be safe in outer space. It took them 3 days, 3 hours, and 49 minutes to reach the surface of this new world in a place called the Sea of Tranquility. They could have gone for the Ocean of Storms or the Central Bay, but they chose this place to land because it had good visibility and it was relatively smooth and easily reachable with as little propellant as possible. One of the first things they noticed when they got there was that, well, the place kind of smelled. This may sound like the beginning of a science fiction novel, but it's actually the true story about how the Apollo 11 mission landed on the moon on July 20th, 1969. Since then, the moon has had 12 human visitors to this day. We think of it as our neighboring space buddy, but there's still much we don't know about this mysterious satellite. And that should come as no surprise, since the moon is actually always showing us the same face. That is because the Earth and its only permanent natural satellite are in synchronous rotation, which makes us think it's always permanently still. The truth is, it's not in a fixed position, and it is actually moving further and further away from the Earth each year by 1.5 inches. Believe it or not, the Earth and the Moon, although being 238,855 miles apart, deeply influence each other. While the Moon is partially responsible for the tides of the seas and oceans on our planet's surface, our Earth is actually to blame for movement on the Moon. They're called moonquakes, and they last way longer than earthquakes, some of them up to half an hour. It may look perfectly round to us on a warm summer's night, but the Moon is actually oval. The lemon-like shape is caused by the Earth's gravitational pull. Our moon features more than footprints when it comes to traces of humans. In 1969, American astronauts left many objects on the surface of our satellite, such as 2 golf balls, a drawing by famous artist Andy Warhol, and a message from Queen Elizabeth II herself. One of the last people to walk on the moon to this day, an astronaut named Eugene Cernan, scribbled his daughter's initials on the moon's surface in 1972. Since it appears there's no wind or any other type of weather change there, the letters TDC could remain there permanently. It's actually possible to be allergic to the moon. Harrison Jack Schmitt, an astronaut from the Apollo 17 mission, spent some time in a valley in the Sea of Serenity, then climbed back into the crew's lunar module, but had some moon dust on him. Just as he removed his spacesuit, he got red eyes, sneezing fits, and other allergic reactions that lasted 2 hours. Since it's so close to us, we've established that the moon has a time zone of its own. We call it the Lunar Standard Time, but it doesn't correspond to time on Earth. To get an equivalent, the explanation is a bit more complex, but in simple terms, a year on the moon is split up into 12 days, each one about as long as a month on Earth. Each one of these days got its name after a different astronaut who has walked on the moon. The start date of this calendar coincides with the moment Neil Armstrong walked on the moon. So, the Lunar Year 1, Day 1, began on July 21st, 1969 at 2:56:15 Universal Time. Since the moon has a very thin atmosphere, it has some pretty crazy temperatures, both hot and cold. They can go up to 200 degrees Fahrenheit. Over by the moon's poles, however, the temperature is always at around minus 400 degrees Fahrenheit. Humans have tried to trace the connection between our natural satellite and the Earth for as long as we can remember, coming up with words to explain why the moon's existence influences us so. In the Middle Ages, scientists and philosophers thought that during a full moon, some people were more likely to experience different health conditions. Because they saw this inexplicable connection to the full moon, people with these symptoms were named lunatics, or at times, literally, moonsick. People are not the only creatures living on Earth that are affected by moon cycles. Dog owners are 28% more likely to take their pet to vet emergency rooms during the full moon. You may think that's the reason why wolves have this preference for howling at a full moon, more so in popular culture. But scientists haven't been able to find any connection between wolf behavior and the lunar cycles, so it might as well just be a myth. The largest known crater in our solar system is also found on our moon and is called the South Pole Aitken. This giant formation is located on the far side of the moon and measures 1,550 miles in diameter. One of the many things we've yet to fully understand about our satellite is the unusual flashes of light that can sometimes be seen on its surface. Scientists have named these outbursts transient lunar phenomena, or TLP in short, and they have been seen all over the world for centuries. One of the first instances of TLP dates back to 1178, when monks from Canterbury claimed to have seen a flaming torch on the surface of the moon after the sun had set. TLP does not simply mean light flashes. Reports also have detailed other unusual events, such as gas-like mists, reddish, green, blue, or violet colorations, or even the darkening of certain locations on the moon. Is something strange happening with our moon? Is it the beginning, or did we just start noticing it with the newer space study equipment we have nowadays? There are a lot of different theories that scientists have developed trying to piece together what can be causing these events. The unusual flashes on the moon can be caused by anything from meteoric impacts to electrostatic activity. It's difficult to pinpoint the explanation for each event, since most of these episodes are recalled either by a single observer on Earth or from a single location. The fact that there is noticeable seismic activity on the moon can also explain why we can sometimes see unusual flashes of light on the surface of our satellite. When the moon's surface moves, it can cause different light-reflecting gases to erupt, which can explain luminous developments. Some scientists have even suggested that residual geologic activity may also be the cause. This is all the more shocking, given that we've always looked at the moon as a lifeless world. Did you ever notice that our moon can change its color? There are actually many scientific explanations for that. The moon appears to be a brown-tinted gray when you look upon it from outside of the Earth's atmosphere. When gazed upon from the Earth's surface, the moon appears to change color depending on various phenomena. The moon seen near the horizon will most likely be yellow or red-tinted. The rarer blue-colored moon indicates that you're looking at our satellite through an atmosphere carrying larger dust particles. The moon can even appear purple at times, but what causes this specific hue is still up for debate. The fact that we don't know exactly if or how much water there is on the moon's surface is not the main reason why we aren't already building houses up there. It seems that radiation actually has a lot more to do with it. Recent studies have shown that the moon's surface has a radiation rate 5 to 10 times higher than that you experience on a transatlantic passenger flight. That also means it's 200 times higher than the rate on the Earth's surface. In future lunar explorations, like the Artemis project for example, scientists need to take this into consideration, not to expose the astronauts. Named after Artemis, Apollo's sister, this program aims not only to place astronauts on the lunar surface in the future, but also to build some sort of an establishment there to study the moon in safe conditions. While the project started in 2017, the first planned mission is set for launch in summer 2022, with an estimated duration of 25 days. The space object, with no crew on board, is planned to reach lunar orbit and safely return with sufficient data for the next 4-person mission scheduled for May 2024. Artemis 3, 4, and 5 are expected to be launched in 2025, 2026, and 2027 respectively, each with a planned duration of approximately 30 days.
The universe is expanding, and if it's expanding, then it probably had a beginning somewhere. Now all we have to do is to run time backward and see where the beginning was. It took the scientists many more years to come up with a full-fledged theory, the Big Bang Theory. And here it is. Nothing has ever been anywhere, because neither when nor where existed. But actually, no. There was one thing. It was the so-called cosmic singularity, a state of our universe in which it was incredibly small, dense, and very, very hot. Imagine if our universe was compressed into a small ball. The pressure and temperature inside would be enormous. At some point, it became impossible to withstand them. And here comes the Big Bang. It was an outburst of energy and matter that created everything we see now. Time and space, basic physical forces. It also scattered quarks everywhere. These quarks, tiny particles that make up our world, were all boiling in an incredibly hot cosmic broth. When it cooled down, gravity began to attract them to each other. They gathered into atoms, then molecules, and then into the first objects in the world. Stars. But what was before that? Alan Harvey Guth, an American theoretical physicist and cosmologist, has devoted his whole life to solving this mystery. After learning about the Big Bang theory, Guth found some flaws in it. For example, the distribution of matter was very even, although it shouldn't have been. If we drop the balloon filled with paint down, it will burst, and we'll see absolute chaos on the canvas. But the early universe don't look like. The early universe was very even and proportional. That was Guth's discovery, the theory of inflation. Here's what it says. Even before the Big Bang, there was some kind of force that could give the bang a strong acceleration, something that was able to distribute everything in space instantly and evenly. Martin Boyovald is a German professor of physics, and in his opinion, the universe was born quite differently. According to Martin's theory, the singularity couldn't just appear out of nowhere. Let's look at a pendulum on the old clock. The pendulum rotates back and forth. Its movement is smooth, continuous, and non-stop. This is how we usually see time. It flows and never stops. But quantum time doesn't work that way. It consists of small segments and makes short pauses. And just like with the second hand of a clock, the beginning of one segment of time is always the end of another. According to the Big Bang theory, once upon a time, our universe began to expand, inflate like a balloon. But sooner or later, it will blow away back. The universe will start shrinking and return to the state of cosmic singularity. And then, the Big Bang too. Nothing appears out of nowhere and disappears into nowhere. According to Boyovald's theory, the beginning of each universe is the end of the previous one. Our universe is not at all the first and not the last. Millions of similar universes existed before us and will exist after us. This theory, although it sounds very logical, is far from complete. So for now, all this is just a hypothesis. But some people come up with even stranger ideas. Neil Turok, a South African physicist, and his colleague Paul Steinhardt, an American theoretical physicist. They say that yes, our universe isn't the first one. Our universe is just one of an infinite number of others. And all of us are stuck in a cycle of endless rebirths of parallel worlds. According to this theory, our universe is located inside a so-called brain, as in membrane. In other words, we're stuck in some kind of elastic surface that's capable of contracting, stretching, oscillating, and so on, like pieces of fabric on a rope. Another universe may be an inch from ours, but we can't see it. That's because there's a tiny space between us, and this tiny space contains the fourth dimension. How do these universes originate? Through brain collision. These brains are getting closer to each other very, very slowly, until they finally collide. Their collision creates two Big Bangs and two parallel universes. Then they're moving away from each other. The created worlds continue to live. We're currently at this stage. Remember the inflation theory? There was a mysterious energy that pushed and accelerated the Big Bang. Well, if we did collide with another universe, that would explain everything. Which idea is closer to you? How about the idea of subscribing? Subscribe.
Okay, I officially give up on the hope that the moon is made of cheese after all. Wow, not even Gouda. The shiny lunar ball, or a curved banana, or half of a coin, depending on what phase it's in, has different layers inside, just like Earth. One of these layers is called the inner core. About 20 years ago, scientists were observing how the moon rotates. Using that data, they concluded that it had a fluid outer core. But the inner core was hard to study, so they didn't know if it was solid like a rock or molten like a hot liquid. But things are clearer now. Astronomers have collected data from different missions, including the Apollo missions, where astronauts went to the moon and gathered information themselves. Plus, they've used a special technique called seismic data. This method is all about studying how sound waves move through things. Take earthquakes on our planet as an example. When an earthquake happens, it creates waves that travel through the ground. Scientists can detect and analyze these waves to learn more about Earth's interior. The same idea can apply to other objects in our solar system, or planets, or, in this case, the moon. When quakes or moonquakes happen, they generate sound waves, and by carefully listening to and studying these waves, scientists can create a detailed map of what's inside the object. They can figure out things like different layers, what they're made of, and how they're arranged. To check the moon's deep interior, scientists also use something called laser ranging. This method measures the distance between the surface of the Earth and the moon very precisely. And ta-da! Our natural satellite's inner core is a dense, solid ball made of iron, just like Earth's. It's about 310 miles wide, which is nearly 15% the size of the entire moon. Researchers also have stumbled upon evidence that supports the theory that the layer between the moon's surface and its core, called the mantle, has been moving around as the moon evolved over time. This movement is something we call lunar mantle overturn, and it could explain why we find elements rich in iron on the lunar surface. Mantle material ends up being carried upward, and the volcanic rock remains in the moon's crust. Some of the materials in this rock were too dense, like me, so they just sank back through the lighter crust material all the way to the core mantle boundary. It's like a cycle where the moon's mantle material goes up during volcanic activity, carries iron-rich elements to the surface, and then sinks back down. There's another mystery scientists have been trying to solve: what caused the moon's magnetic field to weaken and nearly disappear over time? It seems that now that we know about the iron core and the global mantle overturn, we might get some more answers about the moon's magnetic field. Knowing what the inner core is like can help us better understand the moon's history as well as the history of our entire solar system. Now, one of the theories that's widely accepted about the origin of the moon says there was a massive collision between Earth in its early stages and another mysterious object in our solar system. It's called the Large Impact Theory, and this collision was so strong it ripped off a big chunk of the primitive molten Earth. I mean, not so big compared to what's left. If you put a US nickel next to a green pea, you get a good idea of how big our planet is compared to the moon. Now, this chunk was set into orbit around our planet, and this might have happened about 95 million years after our solar system formed. The object that collided with Earth could have been about 10% the mass of our home planet and roughly the size of Mars. Well, it makes sense. Earth and the moon do have similar compositions after all. Of course, there are other ideas about how the moon formed. One says that the gravitational force of our planet captured it. This means that the moon was just an object innocently passing by when suddenly it got attracted and pulled into Earth's orbit. There's even a hypothesis that Earth stole the moon from Venus. Ooh. In that case, the moon shouldn't complain. I guess the view is way better here. So yeah, the moon and Earth are similar when it comes to rocks and some minerals. But the moon doesn't have the same atmosphere as our planet. Its atmosphere is thin and consists of some weird gases that include potassium and sodium, which is not something you can find in the atmosphere of Mars, Venus, or Earth. And the rocks on the moon don't contain water. But that doesn't mean there's no water at all up there. A long time ago, in the 17th century, astronomers saw large dark spots on the moon's surface. One of these astronomers thought these spots looked like oceans, and he called them maria, which means seas in Latin. Other astronomers also made maps of the moon, and they used the term maria to describe these dark spots. For example, Mare Tranquillitatis translates to Sea of Tranquility, where Apollo 11 made its touchdown. But it seems those dark spots are not actually oceans. They are plains made of hardened lava that erupted long ago. These volcanic eruptions left behind smooth flat areas called basalt plains. In the late 1800s, one sky watcher studied the moon and found it didn't have an atmosphere. Without an atmosphere, there are no clouds and no air to keep water from evaporating. So scientists thought that any water on the moon would just disappear right away. They believed the moon was totally dry. But then, in 1961, one physicist had a different idea. He pointed out there could be water on the moon in special areas called permanently shadowed regions. These are spots on the moon where the sun doesn't shine, so they stay dark all the time. Water ice could exist in these dark areas because they're extremely cold and the ice wouldn't evaporate. But when astronauts from the Apollo missions went to the moon, they brought back soil samples, and scientists found no signs of water in them. So everyone went back to thinking that the moon was completely dry. In the 90s, NASA focused on these shadowed craters and found high concentrations of hydrogen, which meant there could be ice at the moon's poles. They still weren't certain, so they kept digging and, after a while, found hydrogen trapped inside tiny beads of volcanic glass. Since there are no active volcanoes on the moon today, which means water probably was present on the moon when these volcanoes erupted long ago. Plus, there could be way more water back in the early days of our moon. In 2020, NASA's SOFIA mission showed us what we'd been looking for a really long time. There is water on the moon after all. It turns out the water is hidden within the grains of lunar dust or sticking to the surface in the sunlit areas of the moon. So there are no oceans like we have on Earth, but at least there's something. The question remains, how did water even get there? It seems the moon had a chaotic history back at the time when it was forming, as probably most of the planets and moons in our solar system. So there is some evidence that water came there from comets hitting its surface back in the old days, or maybe even keeps on coming from those that are slamming into the moon right now. We're talking about a chaotic situation where icy micrometeorites collide with the moon's surface, and dust then makes an even bigger mess when interacting with the solar wind. But we're waiting to find out more about this. Because, as we all know, when you mention water, you also inevitably talk about life. That's why we want to know more, for instance, about all that ice hidden in polar craters on the moon. Maybe it can teach us more about how life developed on Earth. Maybe comets brought all the necessary elements here. Then, what if there are some of those elements stuck in the ice on the moon, too?
AI can drive a car, design trendy clothes, give you emotional support, and it looks like it can also help us find answers to centuries-long mysteries. Researchers from Yamagata University Institute of Nazca and IBM Japan used a deep learning AI model to find new Nazca lines. Those are distinct white lines on a rusty red background that you can see from a plane while flying over the deserts of southern Peru. Scientists have tried to decipher the meaning of the Nazca lines ever since they were first discovered in the 1920s. There are straight lines, rectangles, triangles, and swirls. There are also some giant drawings. You can see a monkey, a whale, a condor, a hummingbird. The 4 recently discovered geoglyphs, which is the scientific word for those drawings, show a humanoid-like figure holding a club, a fish, a bird, and a pair of legs. What is the hidden symbolism of all that? And why did the Nazca people decide to draw a humanoid in the desert? And did they even know who humanoids were? Let's dig into history to find some answers. The representatives of the ancient Nazca culture created their famous lines more than 2,000 years ago. The geoglyphs have stood the test of time thanks to a dry climate and strong winds in the desert. Scientists found that to form the lines, the Nazca people scraped off the top layer of pebbles, revealing the contrasting soil beneath. The soil's color varies from reddish-brown to yellowish-gray. It makes it look like the lines are constantly changing appearance. It looks like the creators first made small-scale models and then enlarged them to create the full-scale designs we see today. In total, there are more than 800 straight lines, around 300 geometric figures, and 70 animals and plant designs. You can find the first mention of the lines in the 16th century Chronicle of Peru, where they were first described as trail markers in the desert. Since you can't really study the lines and their symbolism from the ground, those geoglyphs only became world famous only in the 1930s. It was the start of the era of commercial planes, so more and more people could witness the lines from their window seats and spread the word. During his research a decade later, Professor Paul Kosuk noticed that one of the lines aligned with the setting sun on the day after the winter solstice, which is the shortest day of the year. He supposed that the lines had some astronomical significance. German researcher Maria Reiche, who got the nickname the Lady of the Lines, supported the theory that the geoglyphs served as a calendar and some sort of astronomical purposes. She spent 40 years studying the lines and literally swept them inch by inch. She also moved into a small house close to the lines to protect them from unwanted visitors. And that's how the Nazca Lines mystery was solved. Just kidding. In the 1970s, American researchers began to question astronomical theory. In a region like Nazca, one of the driest places on Earth with only around 20 minutes of rain per year, water is a real treasure. So the straight lines and trapezoids could have something to do with it. They could have been an ancient version of Google Maps, pointing at locations for rituals that the local people organized to get some water and help their crops grow. The images of animals in the Andes region are also related to water. Spiders are thought to be a sign of rain. Hummingbirds symbolize fertility, and monkeys living in the Amazon mean an abundance of water. That could explain the choice of symbols in the desert, but there's no strong proof to support this theory. So the work on explaining the meaning of those mysterious geoglyphs is going on. In the 21st century, the Nazca Lines have become the research ground for archaeologists from Yamagata University. Masato Sakai, a professor of archaeology, together with others on the team, are using high-resolution aerial photography and drones to discover and catalog the lines. They found images of humans, camelids, birds, orca whales, cats, and snakes, most likely created between 100 before current era and 300 current era. Some of the images are around 10 to 20 feet long, and that's why they were pretty tricky to notice. The largest geoglyphs are 1,200 feet across, which is about the height of the Empire State Building. The researchers believe the Nazca Lines were a form of communication in the desert for their creators. The linear ones pointed the direction from valley to valley. The ones drawn on slopes seem to have been drawn along ancient pathways between settlements. Professor Sakai explains that discovering new lines is tricky. Some of them are so poorly preserved that it's hard to spot them in aerial photos. There are also irrigation systems and roads all across the Nazca region, and it complicates the task. And that's where AI comes in handy. The team showed it pictures of previously explored Nazca Lines so it could learn what to look for. Then, AI went through tons of footage taken from planes and satellites and also laser data from previous surveys to identify the lines scientists hadn't found before. The system works 21 times faster than humans, and it made some curious discoveries. Scientists then traveled to the locations it chose to verify the findings. In 2019, AI helped to discover a humanoid-shaped character with a rectangular head who is holding a stick and wearing a headdress. It became a real puzzle for the scientists trying to understand the creature's role in ancient society. The little guy is neighbors with another famous geoglyph. It's a hermit, which is a subgroup of hummingbirds that lives in the forested regions of northern and eastern Peru. The largest of the recently found geoglyphs is a pair of legs. It's more than 250 feet across, about 4/5 as tall as Big Ben. Could be an homage to some ancient supermodel. The fish and the bird are around 4 times smaller. Why they are where they are is still a mystery. Listing new geoglyphs isn't the only way AI is helping scientists. It's doing a lot of good for astronomy. It analyzes vast amounts of astronomical data and uses its algorithms to identify patterns, classify celestial objects, and even predict new events. For example, AI models have been developed to detect and categorize galaxies, search for exoplanets, and identify rare cosmic phenomena. It also helped analyze data obtained by the Kepler mission to discover new Earth-sized planets circling other stars. AI is also transforming the field of chemistry. Machine learning algorithms can predict chemical reactions, discover new compounds, and optimize chemical processes. All of this helps scientists save a lot of time and resources in the labs. If you've ever written a thesis, you know that analyzing vast chunks of information can take forever. Now imagine you need to analyze the archives of the British Library's national newspaper. It's piles and piles of history. So, researchers are teaming up with the curators to develop special software that can analyze the vast amounts of data extracted from these collections. Computational linguists and historians will be able to delve deep into the past and get some insights into changes in society and culture. They'll focus on key periods and track how advancements in technology shaped various aspects of society. AI even helps in the conservation of seals. It's really expensive and challenging to monitor certain species of those cutie pies living in the sea ice zone. Using high-resolution satellites, researchers can now identify the seals in photos, which already helps. But manually counting seals across huge areas of ice is like putting together a jigsaw puzzle of a blue sky consisting of 1 million pieces. It takes a lot of patience, and different analysts come up with different results. Machine learning algorithms can be trained to recognize and distinguish seals in satellite imagery and count them automatically. Researchers can then use this accurate data to monitor seal populations over time and study their behavior and habitat more effectively.
It's September 1977. You're playing one of the first video game consoles released in North America. You step outside and see the whole neighborhood waiting for Voyager 1 to launch. It's a super sunny day, so you squint a little, trying to see what's happening. You live in the neighborhood right outside the launching station. You get yourself some food and watch the Voyager take off into space. You're so impressed, you decide to dedicate your career to working with NASA. 35 years later, you're now a senior official in NASA, specializing in Voyager 1. It's 2012, and you're sitting in the control room with your colleagues. Everyone is staring at their computer screens as they work on the Voyager. You're sitting on the top, overlooking everything and making sure all systems are in check. This day is special, as Voyager 1 is about to exit the heliosphere, which is a science word for the outer shell of our solar system. It's a bubble of space affected by the solar wind, which comes from the sun. By 2021, it got 14 billion miles away from Earth, which is equivalent to 153 astronomical units from the sun. 1 astronomical unit is the distance between the Sun and the Earth. The craft was originally meant to fly by Uranus, Saturn, and Jupiter, and toss itself from one planet to another with the use of their gravitational pull. Everyone is impatiently waiting for it to exit the heliosphere. 3, 2, 1, and it's officially out. All systems are normal and functioning. You praise your team for doing an excellent job. With Voyager 1 reaching this far, there's still tons to explore in outer space. You were once a young adult watching the craft launch outside your neighborhood, and now you're the main person in charge of the operation. 9 years later. Since Voyager 1 left the heliosphere, you've been checking up on it every now and then, making sure all systems and functions are in order. It's been sending back measurements of the interstellar medium. It's the area between the stars of our galaxy, consisting of ionized materials. Ionized is basically a simple version of a molecule or substance. The interstellar medium is an electrically charged state of plasma, or ionized plasma, and is very unstable. It's like going from lightning in a thunderstorm back to calm rain in a matter of seconds. The plasma up there is different than the plasma on Earth, in that it's difficult to filter out. There are around 0.06 atoms for every cubic inch in the interstellar medium. The air we breathe on Earth has billions of atoms. By measuring the plasma in the interstellar medium, we can further understand the behavior and structure of chemicals and gases. It's possible that the oxygen we know and love on Earth is different than the ones out there. One of your main tasks is to learn more about how the solar wind from the sun and interstellar medium interact with each other to create the heliosphere. So, after doing some routine checkups and other maintenance work on Voyager 1 from the control room, you notice something strange coming from the screen. You sit in front of the computer, crunching the numbers of the plasma vibrations and convert them into an audio file of about 3 kilohertz. You click on it and listen to an eerie, subtle hum. You and your team are surprised that these vibrations occurred in such a small frequency. Given that space is massive, something like this might mean life on other planets. Everyone else at the station rushes to the control room to listen to that sound from outer space. It's monotonous and faint, but it's definitely coming from outside the heliosphere. You run the numbers over and over to make sure it's not a fluke, but it's on point. You make sure your team doesn't spill the beans to anyone outside until everything is known and clear. You get into beast mode with work and try to catch the sound again, and it remains. You can't sleep trying to think of something that could be producing this hum. A few days pass by, and the sound is pretty consistent. If there was some life out there trying to communicate with you, then surely it would have said something that can be deciphered. You analyze the audio files once again, trying to see if it's some phonetic language you don't know. You call in a linguist to see if she can make something out of it. You and the squad gather around, waiting impatiently for some answers. After a while, she believes that it might be someone out there communicating with us, but the only way to find out is by sending something back to them. You arrange a meeting with your team and try to figure out what message you can send. After much thinking and lots of coffee, you decide to send them one phrase in English. Who are you? You send out the signal through Voyager 1 and wait for any changes in the hum, but you don't get anything straight away. It may take some time for a response. You wait all night, and still, there's nothing. It's starting to look like there isn't anything out there. For the next couple of days, you keep sending out phrases for anything to pick up. Since space is a vacuum, sound waves can't travel, so sending out voice messages on a large speaker won't work. You locate the source of the humming and aim for it when sending the audio file. Every day, you send something different, but still, you don't hear anything from them for a week. It seems that intelligent life in the distant world isn't real. The areas between the star systems in a galaxy aren't necessarily a complete vacuum. That's where the interstellar medium is. It contains gases, dust, and cosmic rays, which are energy particles. After many months of this constant humming being produced, you still try to figure out what's going on. You sit there, remembering the time when the Voyager was first launched. You remember running outside after playing some video games. You couldn't see properly because of the sun, and you freeze in your spot and have a eureka moment. You go through some notes taken in the past. The answer was in front of you all this time. Every now and then, the sun sends a burst of energy that causes the plasma of interstellar space to vibrate. Scientists can measure the frequency of waves when the plasma vibrates to show how close they are to each other. And on the day when the hum was delivered, there were some irregular frequencies coming from the sun. So that hum might have been the plasma vibrating in a weird way because of the sun flares. But these low-level vibrations last longer than quick jumps and spikes. They're fainter. You run the tests again and find out that it's not some intelligent life forms out there trying to talk to you. It's the little vibrations caused by sun flares. You notify your team about this breakthrough, and everyone's celebrating. But after all these tests and research, you still don't know why plasma in the interstellar medium vibrates in such a way. Those answers will have to wait. 2027. It's been 50 years since the launch of Voyager 1. You're way into your senior years and just retired from NASA. You have many scholarships in your name and programs for young people who want to learn about space and science. You go back to the control room once more, where you thought you had discovered intelligent life on a distant world. Then you remember all the good times you had. You say goodbye to everything, knowing that this is Voyager's final moments. It was built to last up to 50 years. After that, it'll just be a floating object in the vastness of space. It's already surprising to know that this is Earth's most distant object from us. But it's time to let others take your place. You shut off the lights and close the door. The Voyager makes one last beep before eternal silence.
Hear that? Pretty annoying, isn't it? It's the sound at a frequency of 50 Hertz. It's quiet but permeates everything around. What if this hum followed you wherever you go throughout the day, week, month, around the clock? You can't sleep, you can't focus or study or work. You want to scream in frustration, but the sound continues to torment you. That would be awful. Unfortunately, this nightmare is a reality for the residents of the Scottish Isle of Lewis. Day and night, about 200 people go crazy over a strange low-frequency sound. They say it seems to be pulsating, causing headaches, dizziness, and the feeling of an existential crisis. And no one can find its source. The islanders decided to create a special Facebook group to discuss the causes of the sound, share their experiences, and support one another. One woman says the hum is impossible to ignore. It sounds like it's shouting in your face, demanding your attention. For this reason, she hasn't been sleeping well for several weeks. I understand. The island administration, as well as the residents, are powerless to solve this problem. Now, the locals used a spectrograph to study the hum. The device showed that the sound had a constant frequency of 50 Hertz. It spreads all over the island, but it doesn't originate from within it. This means the source may be far away from the shore. An underwater laboratory? Testing some kind of a secret invention? A harsh experiment on people? An unknown sea creature? Ooh. People develop a lot of theories, but nothing helps. The country's top leadership may be aware of the nature of this sound, but they probably don't want to talk about it. It sounds like nonsense, but let's visit the small northern Irish town of Omagh. Its residents reported a constant buzzing that prevented them from sleeping. They just woke up in the middle of the night and heard this hum. The sound spread in different parts of the city, and no one knew its nature. People heard the sound every night. But fortunately, the city council coped with the problem. They found the source of the hum, but for some reason, they refused to tell the residents about their investigation. Moreover, they said the sound could return in the fall. The locals demand the truth. There's a big doubt that they will get it. Another case of a strange sound happened in Windsor, Canada. It's an industrial town located across the river from Detroit, Michigan. Its residents have been hearing the hum for many years. It sounds at such low frequencies and is so quiet that some residents often cannot understand, is the sound real or is it a hallucination? Other locals say the hum is so strong that it makes glassware rattle in the cupboards. Some people believe that some secret invention used to control the weather produces this sound. But the reality may be simpler. The most plausible theory claims that the source of the noise is on Zug Island. Blast furnaces located on the island release pressure and produce a strong rumbling sound. This is necessary to keep the equipment from exploding. Well, yeah. According to this theory, the sound gets reflected from metal drums and machines and then goes beyond the island and crosses the Detroit River directly into Windsor. It sounds realistic, but no one has confirmed this theory. Yeah, there have been investigations. The Canadian authorities compiled a report, but it was kept secret. The only thing the locals received was an official comment on the city's website. Quote, "While it is not possible to extract the exact source of the hum, possible sources may include quarry activity or industrial ventilation systems." End quote. But where did the version about the blast furnaces come from? They were mentioned in an abridged version of this report without any details getting disclosed. Another problem with the hum research is that Zug Island is located on private American territory. Scientists from Canada were banned from conducting investigations there. Canada, Ireland, Scotland. Anywhere else? Oh, yeah. The residents of Bristol, England have been hearing a mysterious hum since the 70s. And not only them, maybe you, the one who is watching this video right now, hear it too. If that's the case, then you're one of about 4% of the world's population affected by this problem. No, seriously, what's happening? Let's figure it out. The first mention of the hum appeared in the mid-70s in England. A small digression. The Industrial Revolution also began in England. Keep this fact in mind and we'll come back to it later. So, people perceived the hum of Bristol like a quiet, annoying sound. But over time, it began to drive the locals mad, and of course, they demanded a solution to the problem. There were investigations that led to nothing. One theory said that it was the noise of industrial fans working in a warehouse in a neighboring city. But the warehouse has been closed for a long time, and the hum is still there. In 2015, scientists suggested that ocean waves could cause the annoying sound. When they collide with ridges and continental plumes, they release a sound wave, blah blah blah. It's too far-fetched. Other scientists have suggested that vibrations caused by volcanic eruptions and earthquakes are the reason for everything. It also doesn't sound plausible. About 8 million lightning bolts strike the planet every day. These impacts create an electromagnetic charge. This energy causes the air between the surface and the ionosphere to resonate, and nope, that's all wrong. Sea waves, earthquakes, lightning? Seriously? Then why do so few people hear the hum? No, there must be something else here. There are many theories, but look at the whole picture. What do you see? In Ireland and Canada, the information about the hum is classified. It appeared in England in the 70s, and there are no earlier records of it. What does this tell us? The nature of the sound is not related to nature. It's about people and technology. England became the first industrial country. In England, the sound appeared for the first time. If this phenomenon had bothered people before, we would have found some records. It means it may have an artificial nature. Why would they hide any natural phenomena from us? What if the annoying hum is the consequence of our technological advances? Factories, cars, power lines, cell towers, airplanes, microwaves, power plants, all of these clog the air with sound waves. It's possible that all these things cause the hum, but only some of you can hear it. Listen carefully. Perhaps there's a buzzing hum in your ears too. Ooh. But let's not panic and end our video on a more positive note. While in some places the mysterious hum drives people crazy, in others it becomes the cause of a real celebration. Welcome to the bayside town of Sausalito in sunny, sometimes foggy, Northern California. In the 80s, a loud hum appeared here, which prevented people from sleeping. The investigation revealed that the cause of the hum was marine creatures. Thousands of toadfish swam to this place every year. These are fish that can emit unique sound waves. The human ear can't hear this sound from a single fish, but if there are thousands of them and they scream at the same time, then a whole town can hear their party. Sound waves come out of the water and reflect off the houses located next to the shore. From there, the waves spread further and can cover a huge territory. And that's what happened to Sausalito. Now, once people figured out the nature of the sound, they didn't look for solutions to get rid of it. They just decided to celebrate. The locals created the annual Humming Toadfish Festival, where they had fun and imitated the sounds of the fish. They dressed up as toadfish, toads, and other creatures. Unfortunately, the festival ceased to exist in 1990 because toadfish stopped coming to the city. They went to another place and only occasionally appeared on the coast. So there. Now imagine something so powerful that it could rip the atoms of your body apart in a fraction of a second. Ow! This something is soundlessly dashing through space, not extinct, not alive, stuck in between. If this terrifying monster were moving towards Earth, we'd be doomed. So, is it? Astronomers have found a fast and powerful space object zooming through our home Milky Way galaxy at over 110,000 miles per hour, as faster than any rocket we've ever made. This bizarre space object got its name of a zombie star, all because it's the leftover part of a star that passed away a long time ago, but is still moving. This zombie star is a kind of an object called a magnetar. a super small, super heavy ball about the size of a city but heavier than the sun. That makes it one of the densest objects in space. Only black holes are denser. Hey, let's not forget about me, huh? Magnetars also have an incredibly strong magnetic field. The one our zombie guy has is 100 trillion times stronger than Earth's. That's so strong that if the magnetar came close to Earth, it could wipe out every credit card on the planet just from its magnetism, and we couldn't shop anymore. Plus, if a person got too close to a magnetar, like 600 miles or so, it could pull their very atoms apart, and they couldn't shop anymore. Luckily, this magnetar is very far away and not coming near us. When it was first discovered, it was about 15,000 light-years away from Earth. That's a huge distance, so you don't get to worry about your atoms being disconnected yet. Astronomers first spotted the zombie magnetar in 2008. And since only about 30 magnetars are known in our galaxy, it was a lucky and rare find. Scientists use space telescopes like Hubble and Gaia to watch it over time. That's how they discovered it was moving much faster than they thought. Now, astronomers are trying to figure out how this zombie star got such a big kick. At first, they thought that, like most magnetars, this one was born when a giant star exploded in a supernova and the leftover core became a super-dense neutron star. According to their theory, it could have happened near something called supernova remnant HB9. That would make sense since most magnetars are created this way. But when they tracked its movement, they found that the zombie star was moving too fast and going in the wrong direction to have come from HB9. They traced its path thousands of years into the past and still couldn't find any exploding star or star cluster it could have come from. This means scientists now have one more mystery on their hands. Where did the zombie star come from, and how was it made? One explanation is that it came from a white dwarf, which is the leftover core of a smaller star like our Sun after it runs out of fuel. Now normally, when white dwarfs explode, they're destroyed completely. But in rare situations, instead of blowing apart, a white dwarf might collapse into itself and turn into a neutron star. This neutron star could then become a magnetar. This unusual way of forming a magnetar also gives clues about another mystery: fast radio bursts, or FRBs. These are very quick and powerful flashes of radio energy from deep space. Some FRBs come from galaxies that are so old there shouldn't be any exploding stars left. But if magnetars can be born from collapsing white dwarfs, that might explain how those FRBs are still happening. In any case, learning how magnetars form could help us explain many strange and powerful events we see across the universe. But so far, the investigation is still on, and no answers have been found yet. Zombie stars wandering across the universe isn't the only mystery we haven't solved yet. At one point, you might come across one of them while traveling through the cosmos. It looks like nothing. At a distance of 700 million light-years away from Earth, there's a hole, a blank void that has very few galaxies. This is a roughly spherical region about 330 million light-years across. Our home Milky Way galaxy could fit there thousands of times over. It's the mysterious Bode's void in the constellation of Bodes. Yeah, makes sense. You see, galaxies look like a giant web. Most of them are parts of long structures called filaments. Those wind through the cosmos, and when they meet, they form regions with a high concentration of galaxies. These regions are what we know as galaxy clusters. But between these clusters and threads, there are huge, empty voids that hardly contain any galaxies. Such voids make up almost 80% of the observable universe, and most of them are huge, from 30 to 300 million light-years wide. The Bode's void is one of the most massive ones. It has even earned the title of supervoid. Astronomers think it might be the result of a few smaller voids merging. But what could have caused such giant empty areas to appear in the first place? The reason might lie in the origin of the universe. In its early days, I wasn't around then, all the matter in the universe was packed together quite tightly. Astronomers even thought it was something like a uniform soup. But soon, random quantum fluctuations started disturbing this matter. Some areas became denser, and their gravitational pull became stronger. they began stealing matter from less dense regions. This made such areas even denser, and they kept attracting more and more matter. At the same time, smaller clumps of matter started drifting further away from the center, forming galaxies. If you visited a star cluster called Palomar 5, you'd forget all about voids and supervoids and even zombie stars. Instead, you'd need to concentrate on surviving, since the region is hiding a swarm of over 100 black holes right in the middle. And those black holes aren't just sitting there, they're at work, shaping the cluster nonstop. Palomar 5 is a group of stars located about 80,000 light-years away from us. Normally, clusters like this are dense and tightly packed, with stars all bunched up together. But Palomar 5 is different. It's spread out and has a huge tail of stars, stretching across 30,000 light-years. This beautiful tail is called a tidal stream. It's like the stars are spilling out of the cluster, creating a long river of light. Tidal streams like this are rare and hard to study. Globular clusters like this one are super old. Some are almost as old as the universe itself. But Palomar 5 also stands out because it's the only cluster we know about that still has a tidal stream attached to it. And the black holes inside the cluster might be to blame. They're pulling on the stars in the cluster, messing with their orbits, and slingshotting them right out of the cluster. Or would that be sling shooting? I don't know. Anyway, these stars are what make up the tidal stream. Over time, more and more stars get flung out. Palomar 5 has way more black holes than expected. About 20% of the cluster's mass is made up of black holes, over 100 of them, each about 20 times the mass of our Sun. Of course, Palomar 5 isn't going to last forever. In about 1 billion years, the cluster will completely fall apart. By then, all the stars will have been gone, leaving behind just the black holes. And these black holes will orbit the Milky Way, like a ghostly remnant of a cluster that used to be there. Even though this cluster is creepy enough, there's something even more eerie you can see in space: thick clouds of gas and dust called nebulae. One of the most unusual ones is probably NGC 2392, located 5,000 light-years away from Earth in the constellation of Gemini. It was discovered more than 200 years ago and became popular because of its unusual appearance. It's basically a disk of material with a ring of comet-shaped objects. The tails of these objects stream away from the star at the center of the nebula. The bizarre orange streaks in the outer part of the cloud stretch light-years away in all directions. The middle resembles a ball of twine, but in reality, it's a bubble of material blown into space